What is up, everybody? Welcome to Funkatopia Live. And I
Hello,
really need to
hello.
change that video clip. I need to make that video clip so that when he puts the needle on it, plays something, I don't know, funky.
Put the
Like,
needle on the record.
so welcome, everybody. Tonight we got a very, very special show. We'll say some brief hellos, but then for those just tuning in, this is a pre-show. We start the show in about 12 minutes. Well, technically the show's about to start because we're kind of taking the pre-show element and we're making it
Pre-show.
the news
pre-showing.
section. Yes. Well, because we have a very, very special, very, 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 very special guest tonight, and I don't even know where to start and the main reason why I don't know where to start is because he's had so many titles in the Prince camp.
That's amazing.
I can't even. President of Paisley Park. He was the director of security for Prince. He was the tour manager for Prince. He oversaw like 5 albums. He oversaw like the film and production work and the television stuff and even the Prince interactive CD-ROM. And he did. It was the gamut. He literally covered all. I don't even know what title to even. It's just like Purple Extraordinaire. Purple Family Extraordinaire? I don't know.
We'll call him Boss Man.
Well, yeah, let's call him the man. The man.
The man.
The man.
The man.
The man. Susan, hello. Susie, hello. Dave, what's going on?
What's
hey.
up?
Greg calling in for Milwaukee. Yes, rest in heaven, Wally. We're going to be talking a little bit about Wally here in just a moment. Kim, hello. Claire, hello. Trish, what is going on? Yes. As you can see, I'm wearing my Wally shirt. I actually purchased it when he put it on sale. He wanted people to buy it, and I was just like, Wally, I love you to death. I'll buy your shirt. And I didn't think. I think I've worn it like a few times, but I was just like, the thing for me with wearing t-shirts is that I like to communicate something or to, for people to look at whatever I'm wearing and be like, oh yeah, I like that band too. Or, oh, I get it.
Right.
Nobody would know who Wally is outside of our group here. It's, it's just one of those things. Alberto from Spain, what's going on, brother? Titus.
All right. What's up?
So we're going to talk a little bit about Wally here. What I'm actually going to do, we got some news items that we want to talk about here in the pre-show. And then joining us in just a moment, in probably about 10 or 15 minutes, is Mr. Gilbert Davison, who is just, the laundry list of titles that this gentleman has. He was working with Prince from 1984 till 1995 and held all types of titles and positions within Paisley Park and outside of Paisley Park and on tour and Prince's friend and confidant. And there was nobody, I can't think of many people that were closer to him during this period of time. There was people that were close to him in the Purple Rain era, and there were people that were close to him in the Diamonds and Pearls area. It was just people that were close to him in certain pieces. Very rarely was somebody consistently in that realm. Was
through it all.
Consistently there.
Right.
Gilbert Davison, Craig Rice, Greg Lee. There's just people, Sheila. There's a certain people that were just a very handful of people that were, yes. And thank you guys so much for all the kind words. And it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're using this pre-show here, even though we've kind of burned through most of the pre-show, just talking anyways, to talk a little bit about some news, and then we're going to talk about we're going to do a little bit of a tribute to Wally. I'm going to talk about Wally a little bit, and then again, as I mentioned, Gilbert Davison will be joining us momentarily, and it's going to be a great show. So I'm very, very excited about it, and I don't know what to do other than to just get to it, right? So let's do that. Let's just do it. So let's start out with news item number 1. My good friend Dwayne Tudall, most of you know him. He is the author of Prince and the Purple Rain era studio sessions, 1983 to 1984. I'm sorry. Yeah. 83, 84 or 45. Anyways. And then his next book was Prince and the Sign of the Times, era studio sessions. There was other albums in there too. And apparently he's got a brand new, well, first off, before we get into his third book, there is a paperback version of his second book. And for those of you who don't know what his second book looks like, that's what it looks like. That is Dwayne Tudor's second book, the one that is Prince and the Parade and Sign of the Times era studio sessions. There is a paperback version of this book that is coming out that's going to be fantastic. It's going to be released on October 15th. So go ahead and save your pennies now. And it covers 1985 and 1986. You can kind of see behind me. I don't know that you can or not, but I've got multiple copies of both of those books. And of course, this is going to be another one because with this paperback one, there's going to be a preview chapter from his new book that is coming that I imagine will arrive at some point next year that covers 1987 to 1988. So this will be his third book. Again, I believe it's coming next year, and it's going to be covering the title is Prince and the Black Album and Love Sexy Era Studio Sessions, 1987, 1988. What? Obviously, from the title, they'll be covering Love Sexy and the Black Album, but 1987, 1988 might possibly touch a little on the back end of the Sign of the Times tour. I don't know. If he covers that, might even touch a couple of the tracks that ended up on Batman. I don't know.
Yeah. Both of those albums, honestly, they were epic. Like Love Sexy and the Black Album. As I said before, Love Sexy was my favorite tour. So anytime someone was to talk about it, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Totally epic. Those are totally epic. And the next in the news items is Morris Day. Morris Day of the time. Actually, specifically Morris Day. Did an interview with a Billboard magazine and basically said that he would be retiring as a solo artist on November 11th. That's roughly 2 months from now, right? November. I'm not good with mathematicals. He will release his final solo album entitled Last Call. He chose that date because 11/11/22. Get it? 11 plus 11. 22.
Hey.
Morris said, we like those numbers. The lead single is Grown Man. That features Big Daddy Kane. And then later in September, you can expect to hear a single with Snoop Dogg called Used to Be the Playa. This is the second track that he's done with Snoop Dogg, right? Or was it the third?
I think it's the third. But either way, man, that's awesome.
Him and Snoop, I mean,
come on.
Players for life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also on this album is ZZ Top's Billy Gibbons, Trinidad James, Tech Nine, and Flo Rida. There will also be a tour to support the album being announced in 2023. But honestly, I can't imagine a tour without performing time hits. Now, well, I probably would go see it. I mean, how many folks would go to see a Morris Day show that didn't have any time songs played? I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying it in a realistic way because I personally can name a lot of tracks from his solo albums, like "Don't Wait for Me." Oh, me. That was such a great song. I'm just a young man. Love Sign, Love is a Game, A Man's Pride. I mean, but most people would not be able to get much beyond Fishnet and Oak Tree. I mean, you and I went to go see Morris Day in the time. Like, what town was that? The Stockbridge?
Stockbridge. Yeah. Ooh.
And most everybody was like sitting, and like they stood up for Fishnet, and then they would sit down and stood up for it. So I don't know. So this tour has got to have some time tracks, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely, man. You know what? I was playing "Don't Wait for Me" the other day, and it is still awesome. I couldn't even skip it. It's one of those songs that it just has to go all the way through. It's not like, oh, next, you know. And I absolutely would go see Morris Day, but it would be a distraction, and I don't mean that in a negative way either, because it's much like when you go see an actor that you haven't seen in a long time in a new film, but yet you keep seeing him as that former character in this new film. Like your brain just keeps going, but wait, that's, you know, and so, but I completely understand why he's doing it. Because everybody knows how tough it is to be stuck, you know, when you know that there's more to you and you want people to see more.
Yeah, I think Morris knows that more than anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I got a confession.
Like he's kind of not to interrupt. I kind of feel like, you know, his solo efforts, he's kind of flustered by that because he wants to be respected as an individual solo artist, and he's kind of like haunted by
Exactly. He's typecast or whatever you want to call it. And he's
Absolutely.
stuck.
I get it. I feel it.
And even I have I got to get it out, man. It's a true story. It's a confession. I don't do many of these about me, but when I was hanging out with my boy back in the day, we were kids and, we were tight. And anytime something would happen, the two of us were always together. One of us could just call out Jerome, and the other would come handle whatever it was we actually did that. That was our code for like deal with this, and we would handle whatever we had. But it was Jerome, not fight, not nothing else. It was just simple, and it was goofy, but we did it.
Anyway, so Rob and I did the same thing. We went to all the shows and we knew all the dances and everything, and that was we just did it, and we would do it out in the middle of the aisle, and people would be like, "What are these crazy white boys doing out in the middle?" Doing all the dances that Tony and Wally and them would do. It's just whatever.
Yeah, they say anyways, that now still.
Yeah, right. No, they do. Morris also said that he is working on some film and television situations. More details, Morris, please. As well as some other entertainment-based projects, and that he's also developing a watch line. Now, okay, that's all right. So this kind of goes what we were saying before about the whole, trying to shake the time thing. Anyways, the watch thing is interesting to me because, whatever happened to that, first off, whatever happened to that whole debacle with the estate telling him that he couldn't use the brand The Time anymore. Was that, I don't remember that ever being settled. I think, he's going to have that watch marketing to get traction, right? So there's got to be something. There's some artists that are able to, have like liquor, like Ciroc and things like that, are tied, but you don't really know it. I don't know. Anyways.
Hey, there's a lot of collectors of watches, man. You have a serious watch. Yeah. You got to have it. So.
Right. Well, Morris says about the new album, it says, we cover the gamut from up to mid-tempo to ballads, a bunch of great music for an outro that's going to be an event for me. With the last call, a guy's got to have it all, right? So he made it very, very clear that he is still open to a Time reunion, which everybody here would agree would be great. But they've got to get Jesse Johnson on board to come back because Jesse is not going to go on tour to play Time songs. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Exactly. Everybody remember what happened with the original 7, where Jesse kind of stepped away because they weren't touring, and he was excited about it because the original 7 album Condensate was all original Time music. Prince wasn't involved in it at all. Hence why it had to be called the original 7 as opposed to a Time project. So I get it, but Jesse, it would need somebody's going to have to give him a sales pitch for sure.
Exactly. And if they did it, I'd come out. I'd be there all day. And let me just say, guys, we know it's hitting the 8:00 time, and this is still the pre-show moment. But once again, this is the pre-show. We're just kind of prepping you guys, getting up and running, because again, we've got such a killer show this evening that we've already gone through it earlier, and we're going to go through it again. But Mr. Gilbert Davison is here, and this is going to be such a powerful evening. We're going to have a blast. Bow down. And right now, just text your friends. Let some people know, because if they're not here, then they're in the hospital or something. Something's medically wrong, because they need to be here tonight.
This is crazy. Yeah, it's and I was telling this, we're kind of getting a little bit off track here, but just to finish up this Time thing real quick, and then we're going to go into this tribute real quick here to Wally Safford. Going back to the whole Time thing, that would be the tour to see. The original members playing the songs that we all know and love. Obviously, there's still going to have to be the 777 93 11s. There's still going to be the Chocolates and the Jungle Love and things like that. But also some of the deeper tracks like My Drawers and stuff from Condensate, like Trendin' and Sick and Strawberry Lake and all those tracks. And if you got Jesse Johnson in there, maybe have him throw in some of his tracks. I Want My Girl and Crazy and Be Your Man. And then Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis throwing some of their stuff in there as well. You do a show like that, then the OGs come out to play.
All of us.
Everybody's there. So anyways, I'm not trying to get anybody excited that something does not exist yet, but just to throw that out there, that's what you do. That's how you do this. But anyway, it's coming November 11th.
Yeah.
Morris Day's last solo album entitled Last Call. And if you ain't got what you want, you got to get the hell out of here. Yes. So all right, so let's talk for a minute. Let's talk for a minute about my friend Wally Safford. Gilbert Davison is already in the waiting room. I want to bring him on in just a second. But I wanted to talk a little bit personally about Wally and what he meant to me. I was not near as close to Wally as everybody else was. There was a lot of people that Wally was very, very close to, a lot of people that he just that he hung out with on a regular basis. Rodney Fitzgerald, he hung out with him a lot. Audrey hung out with her a lot. You know, there was some people that he talked to regularly. And it hit me hard when I found out that Wally was no longer with us, because this was a man that I have met many, many, many times and have talked with on the phone until the wee hours of the night, just for hours, just talking and talking. And everything off record. Nothing is part of the show. Just sitting there talking with Wally. That's Wally in the Under the Cherry Moon shot there. He's him and Eric Leeds are pretty much the only one that are posing correctly. That's Wally all the way over there on the left hand side behind Lisa. But he is one of these soft-hearted, funny, legit, honest, truthful, and forthcoming people that you will ever want to meet. And I sat and talked with him for many, many hours. My favorite time that I got an opportunity to sit with him, that's him with Prince. He's doing the bodyguard with Prince. But my favorite time with him was in Bloomington. I want to say 2018, I think. Maybe it was 2018. Maybe it was before that. We were both staying at the same hotel at the American. It wasn't the host hotel. It was the cheaper hotel, way cheaper hotel across the street. And we just happened to walk into the lobby at the same time. And he was like, Chris. And I turned around. And there was Wally. And he didn't have any place to go. And I didn't have any place to go. So we sat on a couch in the middle of the hotel lobby. And we talked for at least 2 hours. Just sitting there, just talking about, as you've heard me say, everything and nothing. Right. And, you know, there's him and Jerome. And there are not a lot of people. There are not a lot of people that will ever match Wally's character and his. I'm not talking about character like from a. Obviously I am, but I'm talking about he did have a character to him. He's just kind of like Jerome. He's a character, you know. It's just there's nobody like him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
right.
I absolutely positively miss him dearly. This is him. I assume that he's walking with Prince. This person is covered up. I actually saw this photo set, but it never really divulged who this person was. I assume that it is Prince that's covered up. Gilbert would probably know. But there's him and Prince. Prince is kind of in the corner, kind of hiding there.
Hiding out.
Yeah, but it was just, he was the real deal. There's him on stage with Prince. There's just not a lot of people like Wally, and I'm going to miss him dearly. And I know I can't speak to this too much more because it's really upsetting, and I don't want to kind of kick this off on a negative or like a sad moment, even though this is sad. I just, you know, it is what it is. That's the reason why I wore this shirt in honor of him, because he actually had this shirt designed, and it's a very, very cool shirt. And I was I don't think there are any more shirts left. I think whoever got them, you got them, and that's you got it. But it's this is his book. If you have not read his book, it's phenomenal. It's short. It's a short read. It's hilarious. It's called Wally, Where'd You Get Those Glasses? Everybody now knows Wally's name because Prince released that song. It was originally called Billy's Sunglasses, but when Prince committed it to recording, he went with Wally. And there's him and Wally and Jerome Gregg just being nutty like they always were.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't know this, but he also worked with Parliament and Pendergrass, Teddy Pendergrass as well, and not just Prince. So, there's not much to say about Wally other than he is one of these cats that's just he's just one of these rare people that you will never ever you're just never going to find anybody like him again. Take 2 minutes here real quick. This was a short movie called The Hard Life that he did with Prince. That was I happened to be able to find on the internet, and it starts out hilariously with Wally and a scene with Wally Safford and Dr. Fink's mom. Gilbert probably remembers this. There's Mr. Wally. And the old lady that comes out of this, not old lady, this middle-aged woman that comes out. There's Dr. Fink's mom.
Hungry brother Dallas for some donuts.
Why don't you get a job, young man? What's the matter with you people anyway? You think it's fair for you to be littering up our sidewalks with your raggedy ass? Where you from?
Detroit, baby.
Detroit. Why don't you just go back there and beg for money, you big pickle-headed bastard? What do you want to ruin my day for? What's the matter with him? He from Detroit, too?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you go back there? Donuts. You need diet pills, boy.
Mom, no!
No. I'm going to get your hands off me, you big idiot.
Look out! Right here, Mom! Right, left, not that wiggle.
Oh my God! Of course, that's what will happen when you.
Hey, what you want me to do? The woman called me a picklehead. No, she called you a picklehead bastard.
Wally, we will miss you dearly, my friend. I can't even begin to tell you how much we're going to miss you. And it was an honor that we crossed paths for sure. Love you dearly, brother. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about Wally Safford with Gilbert Davison when he comes on, because I'm about to bring him on. But we did want to take a moment to honor Wally, and we'll be touching on some stories of Wally here tonight. But all right, here's what I can tell you. This right here is a man that I have always quietly admired. I wanted to work with in some capacity. I just flat out aspired to be this man one day. He has been involved with Prince since 1984 and was always the man behind the curtain. I have watched his career for a very long time. He was hired by PRN Productions to provide personal security for various entertainers and clients and company executives during the Purple Rain tour throughout the United States. He was then promoted to the director of security of PRN Productions, the parent company of Paisley Park Studios. As part of that, he was involved with film, video, music business management, music promotion, film promotion, public relations management, and entertainment development. He was then given the added responsibilities of company operations, which included film production, video production, concert touring, audio recording production, and television productions. If that's not enough. Then, if that's not enough, in November of 1989, Mr. Davison was asked to assume full responsibility for all business aspects of Paisley Park Enterprises, and he was named president of the company, where he was firmly in place during some of its most profitable and successful years. And he made headlines in the music industry with what is acknowledged as the largest artist recording contract in the industry at that time. And that included the launching of Paisley Park Records, the launching of NPG Records, world concert tours, production of television programs, software entertainment, development of retail stores, theatrical productions, producing, marketing, and promotion of 5 Prince's albums, including 2 of his top-selling albums, Diamonds and Pearls and the Love Symbol album. And that also included the launching of various music artists on both of those labels. Then, if that ain't enough for you insatiable ingrates, in September of 1989, he started his own entertainment company called Heaven and Earth Incorporated that launched the largest entertainment facility for nightlife in the Twin Cities, which all of you affectionately knew as Glam Slam, which was also recognized as one of the premier entertainment venues in the country. That also franchised into Yokohama, Japan, and had satellite locations in Los Angeles and Miami, and under the corporate structure of Paisley Park. And in 1995, the Glam Slam nightclub located in Minneapolis was reimagined by Mr. Davison as the Quest entertainment venue, which operated successfully until it closed in 2006 due to a fire. Currently, Mr. Davison, I'm still going over accolades, and I'm skipping over tons of stuff. This is insane.
That's so much.
Currently, Mr. Davison continues to work in the entertainment industry as a consultant and artist and business manager. He is also the executive director of Love for One Another Charities, continuing the legacy of philanthropy that Prince and Maite started when they created the charity in 1998. And their mission statement is helping people up and helping people out. There were only a handful of people that knew more about Prince at such a close range for such a long period of time. I could literally spend the entire show. I've already spent like 5 minutes reading off his accolades. So it's an incredible honor to have him on board on Funkatopia Live. Please, everybody, welcome the one and only Gilbert Davison.
Wow. Hi, guys. How you doing? That intro was so good. Good night, everyone. We'll just
Good night.
end there. Yeah, let's just stop right there. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you did your homework.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, but I mean, you're a legend. You're especially a legend in the Purple Circle, and I definitely appreciate the fact that you operated all of this time, in the shadows and behind the curtain, but me, along with all the other Prince fans, I've been following Prince since 1983. 1984 was the first concert that I saw, but I kept repeatedly seeing your name. Right. I was like, this guy is everywhere. He's
everywhere.
He's everywhere. He's everywhere. I just can't say enough that, it's an extreme honor to have you here. And I know so much about you just because, again, you were everywhere. You were with him during the high points of his career from Purple Rain up until the mid 90s. And to be clear, everything I heard was from people who knew you directly. I mean, you're just always this mysterious figure behind the scenes. And when I was trying to prepare for the show and verify some details, I quickly realized that you just don't do interviews.
No.
I only know of 2. The one that was a combat radio one, which is very difficult to find anything outside of like a snippet. And of course, the one at Paisley Park Celebration in 2018 with Sheila E., who you manage. Outside of that, there is little to nothing about you online. So I equate this opportunity right here with being touched by the Pope, that you chose to come
right.
Funkatopia Live. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to interview. So I just need to know what I did right so that I can replicate it for future guests.
Like I said, I mean, you've done everything right. We ended right now. Best interview I've ever done out of the 2. But yeah, no, I've kind of purposely maintained that kind of, behind the scenes kind of thing. It's just kind of where I'm comfortable at. But at the same time, I don't do it on purpose. That's just kind of where I work. That's kind of where I'm able to do my work and whatnot. And so I'm not that guy that's supposed to be out front as far as I'm concerned. So if you can't find me on the internet, I've done my job.
Well, the fact is,
I take some pride in that actually for this day and age. It's like I was
It's
teaching.
impressive.
Yeah, I taught at this college for 3 years, and I would tell my students because they was like, "We can't find anything on you online." I'm like, "Yeah, you're not supposed to. That's part of my job, my mystique, whatever." So I'm glad you couldn't find stuff. So now this is just kind of like an open platform for you to just go for it.
Well, we're honored. We're absolutely honored to have you here. Like,
thank you,
without
Jeff.
a doubt.
Thank you.
So I know that you have Prince stories for days, and I want to make the most of our time with you. So let's start at the beginning, because I want to talk about how you even got started with Prince. I mean, how did you hear about the opportunity to come on board with the Prince camp, and what was that process like?
It's kind of a long story. I'll try to shorten it up just to respect time here. But I had a friend that I went to college with. We played football together, Harlan Austin, who I'm sure a lot of people know, goes by Hucky. And Huck called me one evening and asked me if I wanted to go to a Prince concert at First Avenue. And honestly, we played together. He was on defense, I was on offense. We were more acquaintances than friends, but he thought of me and gave me a call. So I went to the concert with him. We were kind of getting caught up at that time. I hadn't seen him in a while. And he told me that he was trying to get a job on Prince's Purple Rain tour. And honestly, I just thought it was just a crazy idea. I didn't know much about Prince or the organization or anything at that time. I was going to school for computer science. So I was just trying to be respectful, to be honest, and said, "Hey, that sounds fun. If something comes up, let me know." I'm thinking summer job, right? And that was like, I think in January. And then he calls me in March or April of that year. And my mother answered the phone. And she said, "There's a Harlan Austin on the phone." And I was like, "I don't know anyone named Harlan Austin," because I really only knew him by Hucky. And so, I just tell him I'm at home. Of course, as a mom will do. She's like, "I'm not going to lie for you, get on the phone." And I get on the phone and he says, "Gilbert Davison." He's like, "You have the job." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, who is this?" He's like, "It's Hucky." I'm like, "Oh, how are you doing?" He says, "You got the job." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Well, remember when we were in the car and I told you I was going to go on the Purple Rain tour? I'm going, and I got you a job on the tour as well." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Well, everyone wants to meet you. Come out to the facility." And that's kind of how it all started. So it was a summer job that turned into a 10-year odyssey, if you will.
Wow.
So when was the first point where you actually physically got to meet Prince? Was it on that first day?
I think it may have been that first day. Everything went really fast. I went out. I remember going out that day, and he introduced me to Chick Huntsberry, who was director of security at that time. Chick and I developed a very close relationship very fast. I mean, he's kind of like a father figure to me, to be honest. And so a lot of what Chick was doing, he had Hucky and I run alongside of him, kind of like his assistants in the beginning. So meeting Prince came, if not that day, of just a few days later. I remember my first time meeting him, though. It was kind of embarrassing. We were getting ready for the tour, and Chick had these security vests made for us. And
were they orange or yellow, or were they just?
They were purple
Okay.
with a light purple lapel. It had Prince security on it. Actually, I still have mine somewhere in all of my stuff.
Nice.
And I remember it had these black belts that were on the outside of it. So it was kind of like a purple Santa Claus outfit, if you will. And we walked into rehearsal, and Prince wanted to show, Prince and the band what the new security team was going to look like. And we walked in, and Prince just laughed his head off. And so my meeting him officially was, he says, "What's your name?" And I told him my name. He goes, "Well, I don't know you very well, but do you realize how ridiculous that you look?" So that was our first meeting. Chick got a little bit offended by that. And when Chick got offended, you didn't want to be around. So he excused himself, he excused us. We walked out. He took the outfits back. I don't know how I ended up with mine, but I did. and we never wore them again, needless to say. And yeah, so that
I was
that
gonna,
was
I was going to ask about Chick a little bit later on, but yeah, that's hilarious because I
yeah.
know you were security for 1984, 1985 Purple Rain tour, also
Yes.
security for the Parade tour, and then you got moved to head of security for the Sign of the Times tour, head of security in 1988, 89 for the Love Sexy tour, also the Nude tour in 1990. So you've done a lot as far under the security umbrella for sure. And
Yeah,
this is
actually, you're a year behind. I think so. Right after the Purple Rain tour is when I was given the position of security director. So into right after Purple Rain. Actually, after the Purple Rain tour, I'd come back and with plans
Oh,
just
wow.
to finish getting my degree, since I was only a semester too short. And I got a call to, Prince wants to know if you want to come out and take over the whole security thing. This chick had left during that Purple Rain tour. And so I pretty much just took my suitcase and hopped on a plane and went to LA. And yeah, so it was pretty immediate after that tour. So that would have been
so,
80, 85.
so Chick was the head of security before you stepped into that position.
Yes, he was. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so opportunity presents itself, and you just go with it, right?
You just have to
So,
go with it.
I mean, after the lapel and the purple security, I think you deserved a little bit more.
I think somewhere in the back of Prince's mind made an impression of some sort. That guy looks good in purple or something.
That's right.
So I think that played a role in it.
For sure.
yeah. So I have to ask, what is all involved in being a bodyguard for Prince? What's all involved in this? Besides the typical things, is there extracurricular stuff that you have to deal with?
Oh, it was really on the professional side. Obviously, there's an element of protection there. Prince was always very much aware of putting us in situations that may have been, dangerous. He never put us at risk. He never put himself at risk. I mean, there were some times where that was just unavoidable, and that's what we were there for. As far as how I approached it and how I had my team approach it, we were PR people. We were typically the first people that fans would interact with, and we were typically the last people that the fans were going to interact with. So, we had to be in our P's and Q's and best behaviors, and we were representative of him and of the company. On the other side of that, being that close with him, spending that much time with him, and I would say this was true for everyone that did the personal security, there was just that element of connecting with him on a personal level. And you would have those conversations that weren't, just surrounded by the concert or the album or recording. You're just kind of there as a trusted friend, if you will. And for some, it was a little bit deeper than others, but there was definitely a personal connection there. Things to do in being a Prince security on the unofficial side. Making sure that the rear door was open to any movie theater that he wanted to walk in, because the guy loved going to the movies, but he never walked through the front door. He'd always have to go to the back.
How do you arrange that? Do you just go into a movie theater and you say, look, Prince is waiting out back. He wants to come into the back door.
The conversations that you had to have with management or owners of different businesses, those were funny. And it was really just how you were going to approach them, because of course, initially somebody knocks on your back door, you go to the front door, say, hey, we got to use your back door. I have Prince outside. They're going to like, yeah, sure you do.
Right, sure.
So it was right. So it was typically how you approach them. And that was one of the reasons, and I don't want to get ahead of the conversation. After we filmed Under the Cherry Moon, we all ended up in suits, and there's a story behind that. But when the attire changed, when I realized that, we can't run around in t-shirts and jeans and looking like bouncers as opposed to professional security, when that happened, things got a lot easier as far as getting what you needed from different business owners and whatnot. So it wasn't as hard as one would think, but there was tact to it. You had to have tact to do it.
Oh yeah.
So with that, okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So on your security team, how many people did you actually manage? How many were your team?
It depended on what we were going to do. if we were touring, we would have ooh, maybe 5 on the personal side. Typically 3 mains. And Harlan Austin for I think up to 90, 91. Um, During that period after, he was kind of my second. I mean, depended on Huck for just about everything. If I wasn't there one-on-one with Prince, then Hucky typically was. And when we went on tour, we would split that team up, and you would have security on the band, and then I would be with Prince, and usually it was Hucky and I that were with Prince during those tours. So it just really depended on what we were doing. If we were doing a award show, I would bring on some extra security there. And then as I stopped back for a minute, and then Hucky took over for a certain number of years, and then he put together his own team. So, that could fluctuate. If we were one-on-one, there were 2 of us. If we were on tour, it could be up to 7, 8, 9, 10.
I've heard stories about famous people. I guess when you get to a certain level of fame, people try to get to you. And I've heard, there's lots of stories of famous people who've tried to get to him and, were turned away for a variety of reasons. In Matt Thorne's book, I'm trying to remember the name of that book, but in Matt Thorne's book, he's telling a story about Tracy Morgan, who was at a party at Paisley Park, and he refused to leave until Prince came down and shook his hand. People feel, I guess people that felt like they kind of had a right to get backstage to see him or do whatever. Can you name, or can you think of anything, a funny memory of like somebody who was a celebrity or star that did this to you while you were trying to be a bodyguard for him?
Ooh, we, during my time, I mean, we wouldn't, I don't really remember him purposely trying to avoid anyone, but at the same time, he didn't put himself, in those places where anyone can just walk up to him. That's just not what we did. So let's say we went to a party or an event. Prince would have an area that he would go to that was, predetermined. This is his booth, or this is his seating area. And we would stay in that area. Very rarely would he be walking around mingling amongst everyone. Now at Paisley, that was home. So, it was a little bit more open. But even then, if it got too crowded or it was just too many people that wanted to meet him, whatnot, he'd find a way to retreat and hold back. Gosh, with that said, no, I mean, Sigourney Weaver, maybe, but that was
with her.
Well, we had just checked into the Four Seasons, and she was staying on the same floor, and he had just went into his room. I was just leaving his room, and she walked up, and at first I didn't recognize her. And then when I did, she said, "Oh, is Prince there? I'd really like to say hi to him." But we had just gotten there. So I said, I'll get his room number and, we'll give you a call later or something like that. And when I told him, it just kind of went past him, where it wasn't like, oh, yeah, I want to talk to Sigourney Weaver. It was just more like, okay, and we just never reached back out. So it wasn't being out of disrespect or anything like that. It was just not the frame of mind that he was in. We were probably recording back then, and when he was in that frame of mind, it was just about the music and getting those things done.
Yeah, and I meant to go a little bit off track too, because I was talking to Dwayne Tudall, and he said he did ask a question. He was like, Gilbert was around him quite a bit. Have you ever seen him turn off, like not being involved in writing or recording or doing music? And I mean, you did mention him going to see movies, but I mean, outside of that, is there anything that you can recall that, was at least a tad bit normal? Because it seemed like he was always writing, always in the studio, always recording, always involved in music or playing or doing whatever. Did he ever take a regular opportunity to just turn off?
Be human. Yeah.
Yeah, Prince was human. Music was his life. I mean, people say that, and but music was his life. It's what he did. It's what he loved to do. What most people would call work, being in the studio for hours and hours, he just called a day. That what else would you do as far as he was concerned? But he was a great pool player, and we would play pool for hours. He loved playing basketball. Everyone knows that, and he was great at playing basketball. He would take times to go, see movies. Sometimes we would just, travel to New York and Paris. He loved Paris, and just to go to clubs and hang out, that kind of thing. But even there, and I think in almost all those situations, in some way, shape, or form, he was absorbing what was happening around him, and it would turn into a song anyway. So maybe the answer to that question is no, he never shut off, because you just never knew what was going to come up, in a song later on where he's singing about some innocuous thing that happened, while you were out with him and whatnot. So,
and speaking of basketball, I do have a question, because a lot of people don't know this, but the whole skit with Charlie Murphy, and that was reenacted by Dave Chappelle. You were there. You were in this game.
I was in that game. Yes.
Whose team were you on? Were you on Prince's side?
I was Team Prince. So
we
were actually at
shirts or blouses.
Yeah, I was Team Blouses, I guess. But no, we weren't wearing blouses. We were at a club in LA. I think it was called Tramps, which was in the Beverly Center, and it was a private club that we would frequent. Eddie would frequent, and we were both there that on the same night. And Prince invited him back to the house to play basketball, and it turned into that. I honestly, I was shocked that Charlie had brought it up as a story, but I loved the story Charlie told, and it was hilarious. And a lot of times when you're in a situation, you don't really appreciate or realize what's going on here. I mean, I'm playing basketball with Prince and Eddie Murphy, and here's this thing going on. And the way Charlie was able to tell that story, it was hilarious. I laughed my head off. I was shocked that he was like, "Oh, that's the story." But yep, that happened. It really happened. And
I heard there was pieces that Eddie Murphy was trying to get Prince to listen to his music during that basketball.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't going to bring that up. So there's the part that was left out of that story. I appreciate it, but I'm gonna follow it up with a comment after. Okay. So Eddie had his next album that he wanted Prince to hear. So while the game was happening, we had a boombox out there, and the tape was playing. After we beat them in that game, Prince went over and popped the cassette out. I remember him throwing it in the woods, but he definitely popped it out and was just kind of like tossed it. And of course, there's this "oh my God" moment, like,
oh man,
But he asked Eddie a question. He said, "Do you see me stopping my shows to do comedy?" And he said, "No." And then Prince was like, "Well, what makes you think you could stop yours to do music?" And if you took it on the face of things, it was very offensive for him to say that. Eddie could have obviously come back and said, "Well, what makes you think you can do movies? Because you're going into acting or whatever."
Right.
However, Prince being Prince, what he really meant, and I think really what it was about, I know what it was about, he thought Eddie Murphy was the funniest comedian on earth at that time. He loved Eddie's comedy. He would often emulate Eddie's, act or whatever, and speak in that vernacular and whatnot. So it was really he had so much respect for him that he was kind of questioning, like, why are you trying to do this? Because you're never going to be better than me at this. And if you're not going to be better than me, if there's not even a chance of you being better at me, then you should just, stay in that lane and be the best you that you are right now. So it's really out of respect. During my time there, we really never reconnected with that group again. I understand they did later, so there was no hard feelings going forward, from what I understand. But yeah, that was the basketball game. And yes, at the end, did go in and have pancakes. That was true. Absolutely. I went to my room. I was done. I mean, this game took place at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So pancakes were appropriate for the time of day. It was breakfast, but yeah, that's what we were doing.
I'm sure losing that game hurt the most.
We put a hurt number on that game. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back at, obviously you've done a lot of things right, but there's got to be something that may have happened as you were a bodyguard for him and working for him in this capacity where you made a really, really big mistake. Can you remember any time that a big lesson learned?
You know, the one that stands out, and this really, it was the only saving grace. What the story I'm about to tell was, I think he knew me well enough to know what had happened. But we were in Japan, and at the end of the tour, the promoter gave a gift, which was typical, and he gave Prince a gold Rolex watch.
Wow! Nice.
And I took the watch to Prince and said, the promoter gave me this watch, and he says, I don't want it. I was like, well, it's a gift. It's customary. He's like, I don't want it. He already paid me for the show. He doesn't need to give me a gift. And he just felt uncomfortable with it. So I took the watch and I gave it back to the promoter. I thanked him for it. It's not necessary to give a gift. And, here you go. Well, I don't know, 30 minutes later or so, I get a call from management and they were like, what did you do? I was like, what are you talking about? So the promoter's in the lobby. He's, just distraught. He's crying and he doesn't understand what happened. There was somewhat of a language barrier there. And I said, well, he gave Prince a watch. He gave us all gifts, but he gave Prince a watch. I gave it back. Prince doesn't want it. And, it's like, you can't do that. It's offensive to the culture and whatnot. You have to accept it. And so in talking to management, they were just like, well, just get it and we'll get it back home and then we'll send it to them with a note of understanding that it wasn't necessary. So I have the watch, and but Prince doesn't know I have the watch because we're just going to send the watch back. Well, as we're flying in, of course the announcement comes for customs, and you have to pay taxes on gifts and whatnot. And here I'm sitting with this gold Rolex watch that he doesn't want anyway. And I'm like, okay, so now he's going to end up paying taxes on a watch that he said he didn't want. And, so again, I go to the authority on the plane, I'm not naming names. And they were just like, well, just have one of your guys wear the watch because we're going to send it back anyway. So don't claim it in customs. So I asked my team, and the kid that I asked, later on, I was really like, man, because you're trying to react to the situation that you're in. I'm with Prince. And so I have my team. And unfortunately, the guy that I asked to wear the watch in, who agreed to wear the watch in, he wanted to become a police officer. So, I mean, doing something that violates federal law basically is not,
right.
ideal. Right? So, and we have this box. It's this big Rolex watch box. So the box comes in. No, the watch comes in just fine. What customs found was the box. So we're through customs. I'm sitting with Prince in the lobby waiting for our flight back home. We're in New York, I guess. And here the custom agents come with the security guy that was carrying the box. And the agents looked at me and said, where's the watch? And by that time they had given it back to me. So I said, it's right here. And I was pissed. I was pissed because I'm in this situation. My team's in this situation. And the authorities that said, hey, just wear it in, they're nowhere to be found, of course. Like, well, we don't know anything about it. And so, we paid the taxes. I explained to the security. And again, it's how you're handling yourself. I explained to the customs agents what happened, why this happened this way. It's like, okay, you can't do that. So we paid the taxes. We're all on the flight.
How much were the taxes?
I don't know. It was $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000. It was a gold Rolex watch.
It's gold Rolex, right?
Yeah, gold Rolex.
Oh,
And so when I get on the plane, because I'm the one that's stuck here, and when I get on the plane, Prince is looking at me, and he looks at me, and I think he asked me something like, "So what were you going to do with the watch?" And I was like, "Don't talk to me about the watch." And then again, that was the relationship that we had. Because, he knew. I was like, your people told me to carry this in, so I don't even want to talk about it. And he never brought it up again. And so the watch ended up with the accountant. And years later, when that accountant left the company, he called me and he asked me, hey, Gilbert, I still have this watch in the safe. What should I do with it? And I said, I don't care what you do with it. It's just keep it, give it away, whatever you're going to do with it. So I have no idea what happened to the Rolex watch. It's somewhere floating out there in the ethos, and I hope I'll never see it again. So yeah,
that's
so
a story we'll never.
Yeah, but it really taught me a valuable lesson about the relationship that I had with him, and it definitely made me cognizant to not to violate the trust that he had put in me. And I think that that definitely played a role going forward with the work that I did with them, and becoming president of the company later on in management. It's just being upfront and being honest. And so yeah, I mean, I think when that happened, I was 22 or 23. So valuable lesson to learn at a young age.
You held it together well for a bit. I can't. I don't know how I would have had it, because when I was 22 or 23, I was making some ridiculously stupid. Well,
Man.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So in the beginning of the show, we obviously spoke about the passing of our friend Wally Safford. How close were you to Wally?
We were very close. Actually, when I just made reference to after the Purple Rain tour is when I became security director, Wally went with me. So it was Wally and I that were in Los Angeles with Prince before we went for the filming of Under the Cherry Moon. Wally was my second in Los Angeles, and he had obviously a history with Prince prior to me. They had been on tour, and I do just want to take the time to give my condolences also to the whole Detroit family. You know, there's a Paisley Park Purple family there in Detroit. Mitch, Dewey and Noor, the Muhammad brothers, Billy Sparks, Quentin Perry, just another cast of people that, you know, I'm sure are just as affected, if not more so than we all are. We love you guys. We miss you guys. We give Wally's family the best and whatnot. And so I want to acknowledge that. But Wally was just, he was a great guy. And, you know, when we came in with the new team, Hucky and I and some other people that Chick had brought in, Wally and the guys out of Detroit, they had pretty much done the job that we were now assigned to do. So we were this new team, and there was this not conflict, but like, okay, where do they fit in and where do we fit in? But, you know, after the tour started and some of those differences were settled and whatnot, we were all just kind of brothers and, you know, getting the job done. And there was so much to do on that Purple Rain tour in particular that, you know, there was a certain closeness there. And then later on when he became part of the band, and actually that started because they were on stage security, which a lot of people didn't realize. That's what they were doing on stage originally. I mean, I wasn't going to go up. I have 2 left feet, so it wasn't going to be me. But it was Wally and Brooks on stage as Prince was kind of opening up the show and inviting people on stage.
I think that I knew that. I
Yeah.
knew that they were called the dancing bodyguards or whatever whatever they were referring to them as, but I didn't. I only thought that they were given that title because of the fact that they were bodyguards and now they were dancing. But
No,
you know,
they were up there
they
for
were
a reason.
actively guarding him
Wow.
on stage.
Well, yeah, I remember at the end of the Purple Rain, we would do Baby I'm a Star. Then as that show developed, and really just to make it more interesting and to open it up to the fans, they were starting to invite people on stage. And now you had the crowd on stage, and they were doing this whole thing.
Mm.
And you know, it was, where do you put security? And so as we went on, and Prince kind of liked the idea of inviting people on stage, okay, what do you do? And so dancing security.
Andre asked, do you know where he got his sunglasses? Actually, Wally's been on the show a few times, and he's actually he told me that he got his glasses at Target. It wasn't any place fancy. It was like, he said, yeah, I think I got him at like Target or
Anthony, it was probably telling you the truth.
yeah,
Wally had so many one-liners. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And you know, the last time I saw him, I asked, you know, how someone was doing, and I'm not even going to say what he said, but I had to sit down. I was laughing so hard because he said it just like that, just like, oh, da, 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 and I had to sit and just laugh. It was just that funny. But yeah, he was just a great guy.
So in Wally's book, which I actually have the Kindle version. I need to get a physical version, but I Kindle version. But he told a story in his book about you and him hanging out in a club. And this may have been what preceded the basketball game. I don't know, but I don't think so. But Prince and Eddie Murphy are sitting in a VIP area, and Prince was kind of peacocking a little bit and showed Eddie a wad of cash. It was like $1,000 or more, and it was in a money clip. And Eddie snatched the money clip and just walks out, leaves the club. And Wally said he was in the bathroom. Wally comes back from the bathroom, sees the look on Prince's face, and Prince said, "Can't believe he just took my money." But he didn't tell Wally to get the money back. He didn't say, "Go get the money back from Eddie." He just sat there dumbfounded. Now, he said were you there during this whole thing? Wally said he was in the bathroom. Where were you?
I wouldn't doubt that happened. I definitely wouldn't doubt that happened. That would have probably been at Tramps. That would have been at the same club. Yeah, and that would have happened shortly after the after the Purple Rain tour. So yeah, that's where we were hanging out. And yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Wouldn't doubt it.
And there was another story that he said, because I wanted to find some stories that Wally had specifically mentioned you. And he said it was another story where I want to say you guys were in Paris, and it was the two of you, and all of you got to Prince's room, and you guys found a note from a maid that Prince thought was a suicide note. It said something like, "I'm sorry, but it's once in a lifetime. I had to do it." Do you remember this?
No, was it in?
Well, he said it was in Paris. The story goes is that you guys got to Prince's room, and there was a note from the maid, and it said, "I'm sorry, but it's once in a lifetime. I had to do it." And Wally said that both Prince and you thought that it was a suicide note, and you guys Prince started freaking out, and Wally had realized that all the note was saying was that she had stolen a pair of his boots. And Prince was like, "Oh, that's all? I thought she died somewhere up in here."
Again, I will not say that didn't happen. I don't remember that. It definitely could have happened. I think for me, there were a lot of things that I just compartmentalized, and my focus was on him, and some of the other things that were happening, if I didn't have to deal with it at that time, I just kind of brushed it aside, like, you guys deal with it. Because people will come to me, and different people that I've worked with, "You remember this time when this happened? You remember that time when that happened?" And I'm going, "No." And here's all this stuff that was going on, and I was like, yeah, if I didn't have to fix it, if I didn't have to be in the middle of it, I'm good. So I had enough to do.
Wally was one of these rare individuals that remembers everything. He could remember dates and times, and oh yeah, it was like September 12th, 1986, and we were at such and such, and we had a white Chevrolet, and
it was 7:30.
Like, how are you? Yes, it was 7:30. It was dusk. It was like, how do you remember these?
Because Wally was a storyteller, and I think that all of his experience, he would know that he was going to put that into telling the tale later on. So yeah, I would say, he was very good at recognizing certain little details and stuff, and being able to recall those to paint the picture of what happened. And by the way, I have to say, the fact that you found that video footage of Hard Life, I've never seen it before. I've never. Wow. So I was like watching that. Like, that's actually out there. Was that the whole piece, or was that the only cut that was available?
It's a 15-minute horrible movie that is just filled with the worst acting. I don't.
That was a Saturday. It was a Saturday.
It was a Saturday.
And it was part of a Sunday. Yeah, and,
Like
there was no movie. There was no script. I mean, there was no plan to film a movie. Prince just had it in his head to, hey, let's do a movie. And so it was like, yeah, let's do a movie. So he just started filming this movie, and a lot of that, if I remember correctly, was just kind of made up as it was as we went along. With Wally and Brooks, coming up with a lot of the different skits and stuff that was going on in that movie, because they were just funny. I mean, they were just that funny. So yeah, so it was just what we did on the weekend kind of thing.
Oh my gosh! So, and I was looking at this. Matter of fact, there's Wally doing his thing. This is when they had moved from. I guess at this point he's moved from onstage bodyguard. Are you happy for him? I know that you don't appear to be a kind of person that kind of, when something good happens to somebody, that you're like jealous or anything? Were you like happy for him or?
Oh yeah, I mean, the fact that I mean, first of all, Prince didn't do it as a favor to them, but at the same time, you know, he was finding a place for them to play a role in what he was doing. And Prince was always very good at recognizing, that unheralded talent that someone might have. He would see it even if they didn't, and he would give them the opportunity to, use it. And I think he saw that in Wally and Brooks. They could play these characters, and so he put them on stage. That's from Sign of the Times, and and they did their thing, and they were great at it. Along with Jerome, it kind of even that thing out, and they were helping to move the show, and kind of convey the message of the chaos that was Sign of the Times.
So, I mean, really, so much talent, crazy stuff all around. Pretty much everybody around the Prince camp was an entertainer, be it a musician, a singer, a dancer, something. There was always something, even if that wasn't their role. So I have to ask you, and you can tell us or not, but you claim to have two left feet. But deep down inside, were you a closet dancer too?
No, I have two left feet.
Okay.
I think it really comes down to my family. My brother tells me he had asked a cousin of ours. He's like, "You never see any of the Davisons dancing," and the cousin answers like, "Yeah, Davisons don't shake that booty. Like we don't do that." So I guess it's a hereditary deficiency. But yeah, I'm not really a dancer. Even later on, we can talk about it. With the club, I don't really drink, and I don't dance, and I own a nightclub. Totally made no
Right.
sense whatsoever.
So you know what the follow up is, right?
Go ahead.
What is the other talent? What is it? You got something in there that you're hiding.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We have to. I'm still on that search. Maybe at the end of this, you guys can tell me.
Yeah,
Um,
you're gonna find yourself.
I'm gonna find myself exactly.
And one more time, going back to Wally. I mean, he has told the story a few times about having to get physical with photographers and even overzealous fans and whatnot. And of course, the most famous is which was epitomized in songs. Smile for the camera, eh? That's right, you're a star.
That was Carlos and Charlie's after We Are the World thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously, that's when that photographer met his fate in some nearby bushes, courtesy of Wally. When you're doing that role, when you're in the role of security, what was the most physical that you ever had to get with someone trying to get to Prince?
So we'll have to rewind back to the beginning. I think that this definitely played a role in my connection with him. And let me just say, I was always a proponent of not being physical. We weren't bouncers. We were PR people. And, a fan trying to get close, trying to get an autograph, trying to get a picture. I mean, that's not something you punish someone for. You thank them for that, even if it's, just not a good time to do it. You explain it that way, but it's never about being rude. It's never about, being intimidating and things like that. But during that initial period when Hucky and I were assigned to Prince, and we were trying to give Chick some time off. So this happened in Minneapolis. And one night we went to First Avenue, and Chick had the night off. It was just Hucky and I. And I'll try to shorten up the story a little bit. This guy was knocking at the door. Prince was in his private area, and there was a door that was on the balcony and overlooking the stage. And this guy's knocking at the door. Hucky answers it, says, "Oh, I want to talk to Prince." And we explained to him. Hucky explained to him, he's just resting tonight. He's not, seeing anyone. Closes the door. Another knock on the door, and this guy's very persistent, and, I want to talk to him right now, let me in. And, Huck's like, "Can't do that." Knocks again. Hucky steps outside, but then he steps right back inside. And he says to me, can you take care of this guy outside? Like, can you talk to this guy outside? And I was new. I mean, and young and very reactive to given situations. I'd been somewhat used to being put in situations where you had to be physical,
Right.
if necessary. And so I stepped outside, and then, I just explained to this guy, it's like, he's not seen anyone. And I rolled my hand, and he slapped my hand. And, you know, job be damned or whatever, we just started fighting. Um, and so I had this guy against the wall, and, I'm just going away at him on this wall. And, security comes up and they pull the guy out. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm fired because this isn't what you do. So I went back in, my shirt was torn, and Hucky's like, what happened? I was like, well, and I'm like, this is one of my first outings. And I said, well, the guy hit my hand, so I beat him up. And Hucky's like, well, where's he now? I said, I don't know, security took him. And Chick, we didn't have cell phones back then. Hucky runs downstairs, he calls Chick. Well, Chick says, you got to get Prince out of there because you don't know what this guy's going to come back, which he was right. And Prince was always very good at taking orders from us. If we needed him to go left, he went left, right, whatever. So Hucky says, we got to go. And walking out, I'm trying to hide my shirt, just nothing happened. And we walk outside, and there are police, and there's an ambulance, and it was just kind of like, oh. So we're walking Prince to his car past all this chaos, and he realizes something happened. Like, this is why I'm leaving. And so he asked Huck, he's like, what happened? And Hucky told him what I told him. So, well, the guy wanted to get in and see you, and he hit Gilbert's hand, and Gilbert beat him up. Something like that. And we're walking down the street. We're on the sidewalk, and all this stuff is kind of behind us. Well, Prince looks at me. He goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." At this time, I'm just like, "I'm fine," and I was. I mean, there was no problem. And he looks at me. He says, "That guy pulled a gun on me at a house party a year ago."
Oh, wow.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, he said that guy had pulled a gun on me at a house party a year ago.
So this guy was trying to get back into the club, maybe to finish what he started before, probably?
That guy was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that incident, I think, definitely made Prince comfortable with me. I think it definitely made him comfortable with me and Huck. It wasn't,
Wow.
any knock against Chick or anything like that. But before that, Chick had to be everywhere to make sure Prince was comfortable. But I think after that incident, he knew that he was going to be taken care of, and he was.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a little picture of Prince and Chick there
And Chick, yeah.
when he wasn't all gray.
Hey, he
Right.
liked the gray. Chick kind of felt that the whole gray thing was, was Moses' look, so he was good.
Yeah,
He
you
was
did a good
definitely
job with it.
Yeah. He
So,
did.
with so many people involved, in the mischievous little things that might have happened, things happen here and there, security wise, and even with the people you're trying to protect and cover. Say that. Who was the easiest to work with? Like, who made your job easy?
Oh, I don't think. Well, I think Wendy and Lisa were good. I mean, that's who I was assigned to when we were on the Purple Rain tour. So when we went on the Purple Rain tour, we got split up. Chick took care of Prince, and he had his assistants there. Hucky took care of the boys, Matt and Bobby and Mark, and I had the girls, Wendy and Lisa. Wendy and Lisa were always a pleasure to work with, just sweethearts and whatnot. And they were the easiest, actually, because once we did the show, when the show was over, they had no interest of going out to the club and hanging out. So, like, we're in for the night, and so job's done. So yeah, I think that they were the easiest. Yeah, they were the easiest to work with for sure.
Was there anyone that you would call the most difficult? Or, I mean, outside of just, moments of difficult, was there anyone consistently like, here we go?
No, to be honest,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put up with it. To be honest, I'm not. And I must say that in that circle, there was one captain, there was one general that you were protecting, and it's like if we're good enough to do that job for him. There was nobody else that could come along and ask us to do more than that. And, I will also add that, Prince was very, I think, protective of us. I know, when I took over that job, that's director of security job, it was kind of like, I don't know if he said it straight out, but whatever I wanted, I just asked for. It was like, if I get it, he gets it, kind of thing. So a lot of the lifestyle that he had, in a way, I had as well. You get done with your tour, and his chef was my chef. So, I had my meals made and things like that. I could do that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate to have the experiences that I did at such a young age, and for many years.
Dave asked, did you ever have to tell Prince no?
There's a whole list of no's that I had to tell Prince.
I bet.
I guess, I'd have to say, at what period, because my job in my relationship, everything changed in 1990 when I took over the company. And I would characterize that beginning as, I went from being the guy that helped to support him and doing what he wanted to do and go where he wanted to go, to being the guy that told him no. So to answer that question, yeah, that was a big part of our relationship, was the guy to tell him no.
Yeah, because I definitely want to fast forward to talk about Paisley Park, because I want to move away from the bodyguard stuff and talk about being director of Paisley Park. And let's start here for a second, because a lot of people, first off, that seems to me like the echelon of positions. That's like the pinnacle.
Yeah,
but to start, a lot of people said Prince was crazy for building that facility, and you were right there front and center when it started coming to fruition, I imagine. And I'm not sure what your position was, I guess, specifically in 1986 when it opened its doors, but do you remember the initial chatter around this facility? I mean, were people muttering he's touched? Or
no, I think everybody on the team was very supportive and excited, of what he wanted to do. I don't think everyone quite understood what Paisley Park was actually going to be. And if you go back to the Hard Life snippet that you had, the building that everyone's coming out of where that was filmed, that was Paisley Park before there was a Paisley Park. That was the warehouse. That's where the rehearsals were happening and everything else. So to go from that space, which was just a rented warehouse in Flying Cow Drive here in Eden Prairie, to go from there to that facility, we respected the vision that he had. And when Paisley opened, there was a great team of people there that brought that to fruition. It was Prince's vision, but it took a team of people to make it work. The studios, those were designed and put together. I think Sal Greco was the name. Paisley fans would know. Harry Grossman was the facility administrator back then. And I mean, he just understood what it took to run a facility like that. Having the studios and stuff, a place to call home, a place to call our own. Paisley did what Prince had envisioned it being able to do.
How do you move? What were the steps, or what were the chain of events that moved you from head of security to president of Paisley Park?
Well, when I talk about the director of security position, I always kind of identify that for really being a year where I was, that's what I did. But because our relationship developed in the way that it did, just the connectivity that we had, I kind of like to throw in, I was also the liaison. It was, okay, what does that mean? So if Prince had a meeting, I would go to that meeting. If someone needed to speak with him, or they, had some type of thing that they needed to address, a lot of times that would come to me, and he would tell people, we'll talk to Gilbert. And then, this is what's going on. And, I would be the one to bring that back to him. And, many times he would say, well, what do you think we should do? And, I would do it. One tidbit is, he asked me to become manager in 1988. '89. This was just before or shortly after Cavallo Ruffalo departed from management. And so he had offered me the job then, but I said no.
Wow.
There were certain things I knew that I knew, and there were certain things that I knew that I didn't know. And I've always, taught and, tell people it's important to know what you don't know so
Yeah.
you can learn
Right.
it, so you can find out and ask the questions that you needed. And I didn't know a lot about the music side as far as radio promotion and just all that stuff going forward. So there were some things I wanted to fill in. I also, kind of had my own aspirations. Remember, going back to this was a summer job for me. I had no aspirations to go into the music business, and didn't know that this is where this road was going to take me. So, and I remember him asking me as well. This was probably it was around the same year. He's like, "What do you want to do? Because I know you don't want to follow me around for the rest of your life." And I told him I wanted to build a nightclub because we had spent so many nights, days, hours in all these different clubs from around the world. And, no slight against First Avenue, but I didn't feel that Minneapolis really had a music focal point, something that really represented the Minneapolis sound, and definitely not something that was, directly connected to what Prince and the whole Paisley thing had created. Um, through First, I just felt he was part of a bigger thing. I mean, there were legends and so many bands came through First Avenue. He was just one of those, but having your own thing. So I told that idea to him, and he just said, you should do it. And, if you do it, I'll help you out, as I can. And so I started looking. There was a gentleman by the name of Eric Turk, actually, that was helping me, locate a spot. And just certain things just didn't work out. It wasn't coming to pass. And one night we were playing the Fine Line. And the stage there is low. And he called me up to the stage as the band's playing. And, so I walk up to the stage and he looks at me as the band's doing something, I don't know, playing a solo or something. And he looks at me, he says, "What am I doing playing here?" And he used some choice words at the same time. He could definitely be a person that could, he knew how to motivate people. Let's put it that way. But he said, "What am I, And he says, "If you don't build a club, I'm going to build a club." So I got upset, I got mad. I was challenged, but he was right. And from that conversation, there was one of the owners of the Fine Line. He brought her outside and says, "Help him, put a club together." And so we were on tour, I think. And so she went out and researched and found the place, and it ended up becoming the club. When the club was built, I'm sorry, this has gotten long.
No, this is fantastic.
All right.
So when the club was built, and we're just going through different things. And like I said, I mean, our relationship was close, and kind of what he had was mine, and what I had was his, in a sense. Right. So I was building the club that he felt like, hey, we're gonna have a club. He didn't put any money into the club or anything like that. What he did do for me, and I think that a lot of people, realize it, but for me and for a lot of people that I know, he was very generous. He would help if you needed something. Prince was there for you, and he didn't give me money. Well, what he did is he guaranteed a loan for me to get the project started. Nice. And didn't have to do that. Definitely left the company exposed. He had a really good team of managers at the time, particularly his business manager at that time. She's like, "You're effing crazy if you think I'm going to put millions of dollars in the club. You got to figure this out." And so I figured the rest of it out. And so I was leaving Paisley Park in 1990, and that was going to be my departure, and I was going to be a nightclub owner. And I was approached not by Prince. I was approached by his business manager and his attorney. And things weren't going well, just to be frank. Warner's wanted him to take a break. He'd release an album every year, since 77, 78.
Right.
The previous album did not sell well. Tours were not selling well, and they just, he needs to take a rest. And I think they put me in that position not because they thought I was capable of handling it, but I was just the guy that could give them that news, to just stop. And, if anything went wrong, I was going to be easy to point the finger at me saying it's his fault. And it's Prince's fault because he made his bodyguard security guy, head of Paisley Park.
Yeah.
But obviously they underestimated us.
Right.
And we went forward. It's another thing, and this speaks to Prince's sensitivity. I remember we were on a flight, and he asked me. He says, does it bother you that people say negative things about you becoming president, my manager, from where you were? And it really didn't. I mean, I didn't read any press articles and stuff like that.
Right.
But I said no, and he says it shouldn't. He says I used to be a caddy. That's one of the things that he did when he was a kid. He was a caddy at a golf course, and it was just his way of going.
I did not know that. I always wondered if Prince ever had a normal, regular
He
job.
did have a normal, regular job. He was a caddy at a golf course
I
as a
did
kid.
not know that.
Yeah, and he told me
That's
that, and it was
awesome.
just his way of going. You can't allow. I mean, and I really mean you can't allow others to dictate what you're capable of doing. It's just not. And I think that's one of the things that he was always trying to convey to his audience and to the record labels, to everyone. It's like you are not going to set the parameters of who I'm going to be or what I'm going to do. So
I am like incredibly. This is like an amazing interview, and thank you for being so open. And for those of you just joining us, I am so sorry that I've gone this long without reintroducing who we have here. It's Mr. Gilbert Davison, who has been with Prince since from 1984 to 1995, and a bunch of, just the accolades just go on forever, from director of security to president of Paisley Park and one of the founders of Glam Slam. And it's an honor to have you on board. Now, I wanted to kind of touch on this too, because when you were put into that position at Paisley Park, like you had just alluded to, Paisley Park is in financial trouble. The overspending is heavily prevalent, and this is obviously from what I've read. In 1995, there was a publication called and may still exist, St. Paul Pioneer Press, said that you frequently had to go behind Prince after he made some exorbitant request and tell them whatever he says, don't do that. And then when Prince found out that he had been denied what he had originally requested and that you stopped it or whatever, he would simply go into an account that he had access to and just write himself a check. How frustrating was that for you? Because I can't imagine what that must have been like when you're trying to get things back in order. I mean, were you ever able to put the reins on that at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, they kind of put two different time periods into place. The bank account that he was drawing from, I gave him that bank account. And then say, what do you mean you gave him the bank account? It was his own money. I set up a bank account for him to do his own projects out of, so he would stay out of the company business. And that was the thing. I think, I had to get him to understand. Well, when I got the job, when I accepted the job, because at first I said no, then I said I'd agree to do it for a year, which turned into 1, 2, 3, 4. But we had a conversation. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with the business. I just want to do my music. You do the business, I'll do the music. And I was like, that's just great. And I do want to take this time. It wasn't just me. We had a team of people. I don't like in the business where, a person, so I did this, I did that. It takes a team of people to do this type of thing. And I had a team. And so our team went to work. And, one of the things, so for example, the first, an approaching Warner's did want him to take a break. I had a conversation with him, and this was the Diamonds and Pearls record. But I had a conversation with him about what he's done up to this point and about the need to do something different. A conversation that, the Purple family the Purple fans were no longer showing up to our concerts in camisoles. Yes, you guys did. You know, you did. You know, and ruffled shirts. You know, they moved on from that. Not necessarily from him, but they grew up a little bit. Now they have, you know, families. They have mortgages. They have jobs. You know, and so let's write to that. Let's write a more adult record. And you know, as I said, I mean, you could have any conversation with Prince, and he could write about it. I don't care what it was.
Right.
And I'm not saying that, you know, that conversation was the catalyst for Diamonds and Pearls, but what he came back to me with was Diamonds and Pearls. And it was an adult contemporary record. And it was Prince's first adult contemporary record. And I knew when I listened to it, it's what I needed to go in and have this conversation with Warner's. So here's a little tidbit. So I had to go to Warner Brothers knowing that they were going to try to convince me a way to convince him to take a break. That's what this whole meeting was about. On our side of it, it was I had to go in there and convince them to allow us to release a record, which, you know, they weren't going to stop it, but they weren't going to support it if he did. And so before I went into that meeting, I told Prince, I said, if I call you and I ask you for something, just say yes. We can figure it out later. And so I go in and I hear the different guys from Warner's, you know, saying this is why he shouldn't, this is why we need to take a break, blah, 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 blah. I listen to him and I says, okay, guys, you know, I hear all that. I said, but we've got this amazing record. And instead of focusing on all the stuff that Prince has done, why don't we focus on the things he has not done? And they were like, well, he won't do interviews. You know, he won't go to conventions and meet the radio programmers and all those things that you need to promote a record. And I was like, yeah, he will. And they were like, okay. So then they challenged me. So, okay, Jack the Rapper convention is coming up in Atlanta. We need him to go to Jack the Rapper and meet the radio programmers. And I said, no problem. We'll go, you know.
That's a great show.
And they were like, yeah. And they were like, there's no way. And I was like, no, he'll go. And they were kind of, well, you know, you're saying that he's going to go. But I said, well, you know, I'll get him on the phone. So I called him in that meeting on the speakerphone. It's like, hey, Prince, so-and-so's here, so-and-so's here, so-and-so's here. We're all excited about the record and whatnot, but we need you to play Jack the Rapper convention in Atlanta. And he goes, okay, I'll do it. And all right, you know, I'm going to finish up this meeting. I'll call you after. I'll talk to you later. And I hung up the phone and they lost it. There was like no effing way. Like he's gonna do it. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know, he'll do it, and he did, and we did it.
Yeah, he did.
We did a number of. If you look at what happened during Diamonds and Pearls, we kind of opened up where he had been and made him more accessible. You know, it was working. I think is it not Diamonds and Pearls? It was one of those videos that we did. It was the first time Prince ever appeared with children. In the music video. I think it was for that record. Maybe that was the Love Symbol record. Anyway, and then, you know, putting the team together in order to bring that album to true fruition. And there's a lot to unwrap here because so much had changed in the industry. Rap and hip hop were, you know, they were changing the whole scene of things. I mean, you know, there was that R&B was going backwards, you know, and this whole new thing was coming up. And so, you know, here I'm trying to change this very provocative, you know, hypersexual brand that we had developed in the 80s. And now I'm bringing them into your front living rooms. And so, you know, there were other elements that we had to bring forward. And so this is a tidbit on your show that I don't think anyone knows. And I have to give kudos to these two people for making Diamonds and Pearls the success that it was. And there were a lot of other people, but this is the two that people don't know. So I hired two people to work this album for us at radio. And one of those people were Bob Cavallo, Prince's former manager. I had so much respect for Bob. Bob was a genius. You know, he knew this business better than most people. I mean, he was just one of those brilliant men that I just loved and had a lot of respect for. So I had to call Bob and I asked Bob if he would work the record for us on the West Coast, which he agreed to do. Wow. And on the East Coast, we hired Frank DeLeo, Michael Jackson's former manager. worked the East Coast in radio promotion for the Diamonds and Pearls album. And yeah, so they had a hand in making it the success that it was.
Well, was Prince aware that you had reached back out to Gavala?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he didn't push back at all.
It was, and well, he did the music,
okay.
I did the business, and that was the agreement, you know.
Right.
So you take care of the business, I'll take care of the music. And, you know, I think that, again, you know, he was aware that we were doing something different. For me, it was applying, you know, business 101 ethics to Paisley Park, and as opposed to it being a facility that was trying to assuage his needs and desires and stuff on a consistent basis. Like, let's run this thing as a business. That's what this is really all about. And if the business works, it's going to allow you to do the things that you want to do, you know, but it's got to work for, and, you know, in defense of the industry, and maybe in defense of Warner's, I understood what their concerns were. You know, there was a business model that had to be followed in order to sell records. That's the business that we were in. The music is, from an artistic standpoint, you know, it is what it is. It's a beautiful thing. You're creating a product, but at the end of the day, from a business standpoint, it's a product, and you have to figure out a way to get that, not just get the product out to the masses, but to sell that product to the masses. And that's what their job was. And they were saying, this is difficult for us to do under the guys that we've been doing it for the last 10, 11 years. And so something new had to happen. And so Diamonds and Pearls was that new thing that happened.
Yeah, this is actually a picture for those who are watching. I know we've got many people that are listening audio only on the app. Hopefully you guys will be able to tune in and check out the video version of this, but I'm showing a picture that's a screen capture from Get Off. And I'd read a story about a guy named Rob Borm, the videographer that made the video for Get Off. Do you remember this guy?
Oh yeah, I remember Rob.
At the time, Warner Brothers had cleared a $220,000 budget to make this video. And your instructions to Borm were, is it Brom or Borm?
Borum, Rob Borum.
Your instructions to him were, Prince wants his yellow suit in it, he wants his yellow car in it, and he wants it to look a little like Caligula. And then you also added, oh, by the way, there's probably going to be quite a few changes to the concept. And the project ended up costing $1.3 million, since Prince wanted to make the most use out of that Caligula type set, since he really dug the imagery. And this is a storyline I've seen a lot in the Prince world, where people had to chase him down for payment, or more so non-payment, on projects like this. How much did this kind of stuff put you through? How much hell did this put you through, and to kind of use a little more loose, when he would do things kind of like this? I mean, were you ever caught in the middle? I'm sure that you were. This some type of activity where people are just coming to you as the director of Paisley Park and demanding to be paid? I mean, was this like a regular daily thing for you?
Yeah. And so, you know, you kind of get back into the position of, you know, the person that asks, did you have to tell Prince no? You know, it's my job to say no. And unfortunately, you know, everybody's going to have their different way of telling that story. But what would happen frequently is he would ask to do something and they couldn't tell him no. They wouldn't tell him no. They would just do it. And then they would come to me with the bill. And I was like, well, this wasn't approved. And so, well, he told me to do it. It's like, well, yeah, but you needed to come. There's a system here. You need to come get approval from me or from accounting, or someone has to know, you know, that he's going to do this or he wants to do that. And right. So if it can't be done, because to be honest, I mean, Prince wasn't looking at the books,
right?
You know, so, and he also wouldn't know how much something costs. So he might say, yeah, I want my yellow car here. And, you know, let's just, for example, let's say, you know, that's $10,000. And, but he wouldn't know it was $10,000, but they would still bill us $10,000. And then it would come to me and say, well, I need $10,000. Prince wanted his yellow car there. And then, of course I would be like, well, who approved it? You know, well, he told me to do it. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not approval. I mean, if he had asked you to bring in a herd of elephants, well, how much was that going to cost? You're like, didn't you think to take the time to come and get approval. And so, there was a lot of that going on, and just trying to, calm some of those things down before the bills got out of hand. But there were times, yeah, they would get out of hand, and sometimes I wouldn't approve it. It's like, that's your fault. Like, you have to be responsible that you didn't follow the system that was in place to get approval. Prince isn't the approval, I was the approval. And that was the other thing. They gave me oversight of the company. So he didn't have the ability to just spend at his own discretion without consequences.
And I gotta ask this question though. What is your family life like at this point when you're working for him?
Ooh,
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Prince is his whole world is all enveloping, it seems. So I'm just trying to figure out where, because we're going to talk about Michael here, starting in this next question, and I go back to my original question: what is your family life? How is this?
It was difficult. I guess would say challenging. As a young family at that time. I think Michael was 4, 5, 6 years old at the time, and my oldest daughter Essence was 9 at the time, 10. So there were a lot of things that I was missing out on. But I was working, at the end of the day, like most people. I mean, you're doing this job, and you're doing it to provide for your family, and I was providing for my family. So when I measured it, that they had what they needed. They were safe, they were comfortable. I felt as a provider, I was able to go above and beyond. And, somebody makes that sacrifice in a family structure. And so I just kind of figured it's what I signed on to. But, we handled it, and yeah, we made it work. My wife had worked for Sheila E., so she knew what this lifestyle and what that was all about. So I think that was easier for her to disseminate or assimilate, what was going to happen next. We met on the Purple Rain tour. Actually, she was Sheila E.'s road manager, and I was doing security, and so that's where we met.
Okay.
So that tour worked out because the two of them were together, playing together regularly in that tour.
Mm-hmm.
The Side of the Times tour works out because Sheila's playing drums for him at that point. So it seemed like your relationship really kind of worked out in a lot of ways, because there was a lot of tours where Sheila was there. But what? Again, and
that's why I say there were different. The scope of the relationship with Prince and I wasn't just the business part of it, and so with Michael, for example, he'd come to the house and see Michael. Prince was so Sheila is Michael's godmother.
Yes. I was going to refer to that here. Let me put up this picture of Michael. For those of you who know, a few weeks ago we were honored to have Michael Gabriel here on the show. For those who do not know, Michael Gabriel is Gilbert Davison's son. You heard, and we intentionally did not bring this up. I saw it go by in the chat a couple of times because this album by Michael, his brand new album, is so phenomenal. And I'm not saying that for any other reason, just because it is a fantastic album. It is just strong from front to back. The songwriting is amazing front to back. And I wanted it to stand on its own without you guys knowing that Gilbert Davison was his father, or that Prince and Sheila E. were his godparents. So I wanted to make sure that component didn't affect how you view this album. And I think that it definitely
it stood on its own for sure.
It absolutely stood on its own.
Absolutely.
So I do have to ask, did Prince spend a lot of time with Michael, as far as, just hanging out with him or musically or any of that?
Well, I would say that. So No, I can't say that, hang out and, we're going to watch cartoons on Saturday morning with him.
Dang.
But he would come by. I mean, he would come by and visit, from time to time. And it was almost like a curiosity, because it was something that he didn't have in his life. And so, Michael was able to kind of give him a little bit of insight of what it was like to have a kid around. When you walked into Prince's house for a number of years, Michael's picture is what you saw. He had it right in the front door picture that we gave him. With my son Francisco, Prince came down to the hospital when he was born. So there was this whole integration of the family thing that kind of tied into our relationship. I don't. He would show up sometimes and honk the horn and, hey, Prince is outside. And, we'd go ride around and listen to different music that he was working on and whatnot.
Really?
Or, yeah, or, Prince is on the phone. He wants you to come play basketball, that kind of thing. So, so there was definitely a more of a family connection, a brotherhood, if you will, than just a work relationship, which, to be honest, is one of the reasons why when I was offered the job of president, I was hesitant because I knew that was going to change. And again, it's moving from being that guy that's supporting him, helping to do the stuff that he wanted to do. And I was still that as president, but I was also now going to become that guy that's telling him no, that kind of had to stand in the gap for his own good at certain times. And I knew that was going to change the different dynamics. I also knew I wasn't going to have time to hang out and, play basketball with you or, let's go to the movies. I was just too busy because I not only had Paisley, I had the club at the same time.
Right.
So, the dynamics of work didn't only affect my relationship here at home, it definitely affected my relationship with him.
Yeah, it's just people are losing their minds here in the chat room.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what I didn't want when we were doing the show with
Right.
Michael, is that I didn't want that to derail what we were doing with him. I mean, you already kind of answered the question. Is like I always wanted to know if Michael actually had spent any time with Prince and Michael had ever spent any time together. Give him some tips or do any jam sessions with him.
Michael told me this story. And this was more recently, actually, because they were in the studio. He had went into the studio with Prince and Sheila, and I think Michael was probably around 19 or 20, 21 at the time. And this is his story to tell, so I'm uncomfortable. He probably wouldn't tell the story because for him, he's always kind of been in this environment of entertainment and whatnot. This is not new to him. And so there's certain things that we talk about. There's certain things you don't talk about. You don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. So he's just kind of holds some cards close to the chest. But he went to the studio and with Prince and he said Prince was playing something. I asked him, how he was doing. Because I hadn't talked to him. This was after I had left. I said, how was he doing? He said, it's fine. And Michael says, he was playing something. He was trying to explain what he was doing in constructing this song. And Michael said, but he looked at me, he goes, he understands what I'm talking about. And, that was kind of like, for me, a way of Prince knowing, and like I said, he just had this innate sense of being able to, I don't know, sense talent or realize talent or just know. Michael's always just kind of been comfortable around music. And, when you have a child, you want, Chris, you're a father, right? Jeff, are you a father?
Yes.
I am. Yes.
Okay. So you guys know you want the best for your children. You want them to follow their dreams and, do what they want to do. And understanding how difficult this business is, with Michael, we never pushed him towards music. If anything, I'd push him somewhere else, having been in it myself, knowing the difficulties. But it's just always been there with him. So we try to provide the support that we needed, but we were never, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And it was always more making sure that he had a life of stability and that he was happy. and that he had the opportunities. But in order to do this, you can only go so far, and then it just becomes you. And you guys know this as performers. You know that's a lonely place to be. You can have the accolades, you can have the applause, but at some point it just becomes you. And that's what I'm most proud with him. I mean, he's been able to navigate and handle that, and he's inspiring to me. I'm so proud of him and what he's been able to accomplish, and I just look forward to what he's going to do in sharing his talent with the world.
Yeah, I can only
We are
imagine.
too.
Yeah, I can only imagine that working with Sheila E. is a masterclass in itself. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
she's been at it for a minute. When
Yeah.
was the last time that you stepped inside Paisley Park? I know you were at the celebration 2018. Was that the last time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a year ago. Probably in the last year or so. I went over for different reasons.
And the reason why I asked is because a lot has changed inside that building because I watch old videos of some, cinematography that was done inside that building before he passed, and everything kind of changed and murals got painted over and things got repurposed. Thinking about all that, because you spent a lot of time there, what is one thing that you saw when you were there that you wish they wouldn't have changed or made?
It's hard to identify the space for what it is now as compared to what it was when it was Paisley Park, the production facility. I understand and I can appreciate what they're doing or what had to be done, and even what Prince was doing as he was, wanting it to be open more to the public and things like that. But for me, Paisley was always its own separate entity. I kind of identified it as being a living, breathing thing. And so with that said, she was built to produce art. She was built to produce work. She was built to produce music. She was built to produce shows and all that. And so, it's kind of hard for me to see it through the lens that it is now and appreciate it. I was more, and I think still, kind of in line of she's got to go back to her true nature and, continue to be what she was designed to be.
Right.
Yeah. So, I was talking to the previous group that was responsible for the facility, and it was during an interview of when they were going back and forth of what happens next. And I said, well, right now you guys are kind of dancing a fine line between it either being a museum or a mausoleum. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
and it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It's not. It wasn't easy to run and make the space work when Prince was alive. And when everything was clicking on all cylinders. It takes a certain amount of fortitude, courage, and creativity to make that place work. But he showed that it can be done. It's just you have to have the willingness to do it.
I had obviously, God, it seems like 100 more questions. So, Jeff, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to be bouncing around here because I want to make sure that I use this time very, very wisely because, I don't know when we're going to be cut off here because I could keep you all night. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the Black Album and Love Sexy, the whole debacle around that. And the reason why I want to ask, obviously, for a variety of reasons, but start, what was your title at that time during the Black Album and Love Sexy?
Ooh, at that time, I was director of security, but that's definitely, particularly with the Black Album thing, that was the liaison thing. I mean, it was him walking out to me, cancel the record, call the label, call management, whatever. I'm not doing it. And, then the questions kind of flow.
So
Yes.
I'm pretty sure here that everyone knows, but I know that we actually have like a bunch of we have a lot of people that don't know a lot of the things that us Purple Circle folks do. But so let me give everybody here just a really quick Reader's Digest version of what our guest Gilbert Davison is, who was director of security, head of director of Paisley Park. Just all around extraordinary gentleman. But here's the story. 1987, Prince records the Black Album, and it's done. It's not. It's kind of the same Black Album that you guys got later in the 90s, but it's not. And it's done. It's sent to the printers. It's ready for distribution, and then Prince has an epiphany. Some say it's induced by a night on ecstasy. Don't get your panties in a bunch. Don't get your panties in a bunch. That's what people have said. But 1 second while we're here, though. Engineer Susan Rogers said that Prince was definitely on something that night. In, I guess, in 1988, Dr. Fink said the same thing. And Dr. Fink actually told the Telegraph that you told him that. So technically it's already out there by two sources already. There was something going on with Prince that evening when he came to that epiphany that the Black Album is evil. I don't want anything to do with it. So I will allow you to plead the fifth here. But I wouldn't be doing my journalistic duty if I didn't ask. And to be clear, for everyone here in the Purple Circle, Prince did not take recreational drugs. We know that. Right. It's important that we not tarnish his legacy. But would you agree that he was in a different headspace when that whole thing occurred? Were you there when that happened, when he came to tell you this has got to stop, you got to pull this album? What was going on that night?
Yeah, so I was in the lobby of Paisley at the time, and we had, I think, had met Ingrid Chavez that night. We were at a club in Uptown, Williams Pub, I think it was. And so we went back to play the album. And so he was in the studio. I was just wanting to go home because it was late. But I was waiting for them to get done with playing the album. I was probably going to take Ingrid back. And then he came out and said, I'm not going to do the record, release it. I never, and honestly, I never saw Prince take drugs. I mean, it just wasn't his thing. It wasn't what he did. Right. As far as I heard that too, that Matt said that I told him that, but sorry, Fink. I wouldn't, if I had that conversation, definitely wouldn't have had that with Matt. So I'll just leave that there.
You would have said, this is just between you and me.
We just didn't have that kind of relationship.
Right. Yeah.
So I always thought, honestly, that something had just kind of like, you said epiphany. It was that. And, that sounds, well, you're going to cancel a whole album. You're going to, go through all this. But for Prince, that was normal. As I said, you could have any conversation with this guy and he could turn that into more than just the thought. And so him being provoked by whatever it was that just makes him decide to go in the direction of Love Sexy. For me, I didn't find it stunning. I didn't find it shocking. And I remember that night we were driving around and I told him, I says, welcome back, because he had been troubled just about, I don't know, music or, what that was that next thing going to be. And I think
the Black Album.
Yeah. So he's doing the Black Album, but for him, it's music. And so he does the music and he'll put it into the context of what this piece of work is going to be. But if you remember leading up to that, I think we had Camille, we had Dream Factory, we had a number of records. And I think one of the reasons why he was able just to put the brakes on that project was not because, he was suddenly induced by some drug that had, caused him to have this revelation. I think it was more he found a purpose. And he didn't feel that the Black Album had any more of a purpose than just another record to release a record. It was just another project to release a project because, everyone expected him to release a record. And if you listen to the Black Album, you kind of get that, even in its current form. It's like, what's the context of this record? What message is he trying to send? With
Right.
Love Sexy, he had a message, so there was this whole thing. He needed to say something other than just putting out another project. And so that's kind of, where the Black Album, I think, rested with him. That was kind of my thought behind it. And also, we had no idea it was going to become this sought after bootleg, huge thing, that it became like this mysterious record that thought never even crossed our mind. And to be honest, if it had, I would have just went in the storage room and grabbed 10 cases myself, but
Right.
it just wasn't a thing. It was Saturday night and he had a change of heart. And that's what it was for us at the time. It allowed him to go back in the studio and he created another, piece of work.
And I think what you're saying aligns with what we know about Prince was that not he was on ecstasy, but we know that he gets into these modes where he hits an epiphany, kind of sort of like what happened with Rainbow Children, where something clicks with him spiritually and he gets focused and he's targeted and everything else be damned type of mode.
He writes his life.
And that's makes a lot more sense than, he took ecstasy. Why would he do that? It's not in his character.
Exactly. It's not in his character. And like I said, I had told him welcome back just because he didn't seem troubled or burdened anymore by whatever, he felt like he had a purpose in writing this other record instead. And that's what he did.
And he was back on track. Right. So somewhere between a supernatural intervention, and of course that kind of coupled with the spiritual guidance of a very young, enlightened woman named Ingrid Chavez, who's a dear friend to the show. She's been on the show a few times. Mm-hmm. He decides the album, the Black Album, for those, new Prince fans, is too dark. And he scraps the project and puts out the words to distributors to destroy all the copies before they're distributed. And to compensate for the album being pulled, he starts on this writing tear, writing about the dark force, who he names Spooky Electric. He puts together the album Love Sexy. That's the Reader's Digest version. But so my question was, what do you remember about that time period and what it looked like from the inside? And you kind of already answered that question, but here's the next question. What were your thoughts about that album cover?
Well, so when we did that album cover, he wasn't naked. He did have on shorts. Sorry.
What?
He did. They airbrushed that out.
Are you serious? Wait.
Yes. No, he had shorts on during that.
Did you know that, Jeff Page? Did you know that? Were you aware?
I did not know.
Did you know that he was wearing shorts and this was?
I'm sorry. I don't need
anybody else know that?
Stick with your imagination. Yeah.
No, my imagination wanted to believe what you just said.
He had on.
I wanted him to wear shorts. I'm glad.
He had on shorts. Yeah, Prince did have a certain level of modesty, just despite.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it was. I think that.
God.
What he was.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I feel like I've ruined something all of a sudden.
No, it's not that. When the album came out, I had to buy another album so that when I was walking to the register, I could put that album on top of this one.
Right. We had so many conversations about how difficult it was to purchase this record.
Oh no! Yeah, no.
All right.
I remember walking up and walking away when somebody was in front of me and trying to figure out how do I get this thing out of the store.
See, there again, for us, we're releasing it. And, I often tell Michael, I said, when you're in the eye of the hurricane, you don't realize the chaos you're causing, So we had no idea. It was just a very artistic, that looks cool. That looks all right. and off we go. So yeah, so we didn't quite the controversy didn't quite resonate with us with this record.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's just wow. That's wow.
You
Yeah,
heard it here first.
you heard it here first.
Somewhere in the archives, there's the true picture of Prince in shorts. So
That's what
maybe
we want our
maybe
hands
that'll
on.
there's the one. That's the one you need. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay. What? Okay. All right. So,
Amazing.
that is amazing. That is definitely amazing. Hey, Dwayne Tudall, did you get that?
Right?
He's got a brand new book that's coming out that's going to be covering the Black Album and loves.
Yeah, you know what, Dwayne, you have a bestseller if you can find the picture of Prince in the shorts. There you go.
That is it.
Yeah, he doesn't really.
That's the Holy Grail right there.
The Holy Grail.
Is the actual picture.
My God.
Oh man.
Oh my God. So, all right. So let's there's only one more topic that I wanted to cover. There's so much more that we can go through. I mean, Gilbert,
Yeah.
let me just pause just for a second because I have nothing but the utmost respect for everything that you've done in your career, and you've done it in such an honorable way. Just kind of stay out of the chatter. And I can't. This tonight has been easily one of the most informative shows ever about Prince, and I cannot. Are you going to write a book? You have to write. Somebody's had to have talked you into this at some point.
Yeah, I've been approached to do it and whatnot. I don't, probably not. No, I mean, so again, you kind of get into that personal space, and
yeah.
There's just those things that we shared or experienced or whatever that are just kind of our stuff. Like it's almost, some of this stuff would just be, somebody had asked me this question. I said, half the stuff that I would talk about, most people wouldn't believe anyway. Like, Prince never ate meat. It's like, yeah, he did. Prince never did. Yeah, he did. That kind of thing. So I wouldn't want to, number one, do any dishonor to my friend.
Right.
And the other part of it is, some of those tales to tell are our tales, I guess. Wouldn't really know how to tell them, or wouldn't know how to fill in the gaps so people quite understood it. However, there is a concern of mine that I don't want the humanity of Prince to be lost in the mystique. He's a very inspiring individual for what he did. And I think that people actually, even with all the accolades and praise that he gets, don't truly, can comprehend what he achieved in his time, and what he had continued to do, afterwards. One of the things I struggle with, and I appreciate, and we love the fact that the fans, recognize, all the things that he did with Purple Rain and all that. But man, you're talking about 30 years of music after that.
Right.
And you're talking about thousands of songs in a vault, beyond that. And, he's 57 when he passed away. So, kind of, what would he have done after that? And you realize all this is coming from one person, and you're just like, wow. So, I would encourage everyone to take those deep dives into the work that he did, and, almost, and in some respects, look beyond, the music, and, into the philanthropy, and just all the things that he was trying to do as a person, as a human. He would be the first to tell you, no, he was not perfect. But none of us are. And that was the beauty of him in a lot of ways. I don't think he ever tried to make others think that he was just him, and he was very good at being Prince.
Well, considering the fact that you had what I would consider the longest elite summer job in the history of mankind, you are the person that could tell the story. In fact, that if you did do it, that could be the title, the longest
my
summer job.
Jeff, that's it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to give you credit in the book. Thanks, Jeff Page.
So you get that credit. I get credit for
you got a song coming to you. Yeah,
Easy on the Eyes. I've got that song title coming.
It's in the works too. It's in the works.
Oh yes. He's got to use the word banana though. Still, we're still waiting for the banana song. So
I thought it was custard. Was it custard? That custard.
Yeah, custard. We got custard. We got custard. We got so much going on. Yeah, absolutely.
I did want to ask you about this too before we move, because the last topic I want to talk to you about is the Glam Slam nightclubs. We kind of touched on a little bit, but before we move on to that, I do want to talk about Maite. Many don't know this, but you also currently serve as Maite's manager. So you were right there when she came on board, and you probably had front row seats to watching that relationship between Prince and Maite start kind of blossoming. Obviously, at that point, she's under 18 when she first comes on the scene. But is it obvious to you or anyone else that something else is happening there once she starts coming of age? I mean, are you starting to see, like, are you literally watching this relationship unfold before you? Was it something? Everybody claims, and I would claim the same, that out of all the women that Prince has been with, Maite is easily by far the closest thing to his soulmate that probably would ever be. And some would argue that I'll let you speak on Maite a little bit.
I'm just gonna switch real quick. My earbuds are getting ready to tank on. I mean, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right, great. I would definitely say there was a love there quickly. I mean, I don't think he could have thought her up. He couldn't have created her out of his own hand when he started having those feelings for her. And, I shared this with Maite. She was one of the reasons why I'd left, to be honest.
Really?
Well, she was there, and I felt in a way that he needed to become more responsible for what he was doing or what he wanted to do and whatnot. And that's a whole nother story. But I thought she would make him okay. Like, this is the person that he'd be okay because she was around. And if I felt that he wasn't going to be okay, I probably wouldn't have left. But she was definitely, she gave me the relief that I needed, that, my friend was going to be okay. Things are going to turn out well. And so when I left, I see, he's getting married and all this other stuff. For me, I was like, that's great. Like, finally, he's to that point. He's found what he's been looking for and that whole thing.
Honey, I'm home. I'll be home for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I mean, it's kind of, I remember he got mad. We were talking one night and he's like, you have this, you have that, you have a family and you have children. Why don't I have that? And I'm like, who's stopping you? Like, you need to do that. Do that if that's what you want to do. And then he did, and he tried to make the most of that. And unfortunately, things didn't turn out the way that I think he had hoped and that she had hoped, and everything. Life happens, and sometimes just those things that are beyond your control take place, and he had to find a way to navigate to that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I know that today was the anniversary of his appearance on the Muppet Show, and I remember the core reasoning for him going to do that was he really wanted to set up a library for his children. He kind of was in that kid mode.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the relationship that I saw with he and Maite is she allowed him to get beyond himself and get outside of himself. And I would say one of the things about him is he had trouble not being Prince, not being the persona that we all realize until Maite, and then he found a way to do that. I mean, I remember one of the first shots I saw with him, I think he was just in a sweater or something. He looked like his dad look, if you will. It's just kind of like, whoa, okay, because he's getting there. So you know, beautiful relationship.
Yeah, I would. I would imagine it's kind of because you also manage Sheila E. I can't imagine what it's like to uh, manage two of Prince's great loves at the same time under the same roof.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, in the relationship with
Different
Sheila,
times,
it's
different
very
eras,
special.
right?
Yeah, different eras, different times. Just different personalities, personas, and everything else. And the love and dedication that Sheila and Prince had to each other was real. But again, life just kind of steps in and takes in different ways. And there were just so many different things going on at the time. And if you can imagine Purple Rain, I mean, Sheila was the opening act for that show, and just the chaos that was during that time and for the subsequent years, it's difficult to cultivate a full relationship. And just with all that going on, there was so much to do. We did Purple Rain, then it was the building of Paisley Park, and then it was keeping all that going and having prior to Paisley, we would have our staff would grow when we went on tour. But after Paisley was built, now you have, at least 75 to 90 employees at any given time in Paisley. And that's a huge responsibility. So just a lot going on.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're gonna finish up here. I know I'm killing myself here because I do have a lot of questions, but I'm trying to be respectful of your time. But I do want to touch on Glam Slam just for a second and then I want to briefly touch on what you're doing now. We've already kind of touched on Glam Slam already. That Glam Slam was really your idea to kind of have a venue that would actually be something that would be a focal point for Minneapolis, and the entertainment industry would be like the piece de resistance of a performing facility, a concert hall type of scenario. Just and it also held, if I remember correctly, 800 more people than First Avenue did. So I imagine that you setting up Glam Slam, the initial design process of it was, we need to do what First Avenue is doing, but better. And so do you kind of feel like, even though Glam Slam is no more, do you kind of feel like it accomplished what it really needed to accomplish at the time when it was opened?
Yeah, I think it definitely made a difference. It made its mark in its time. But I give credit to a lot of the staff and employees that we had in running it and developing it. It's not one person. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Prince. And that whole thing. The timing of it was good. I would say that had I had more experience in running a club, which took me years to figure out, because I really wasn't there during those first, 3 or 4 years that I was running Paisley. It could have been almost like a different kind of thing. I appreciate what the House of Blues was able to do. And we were kind of following that model. But, again, for those entrepreneurs out there, you can't open up a business and not run the business. You need to be there. And I just didn't have the ability to be there and whatnot. I'm going to switch here because I think my earphones just went out.
I can still hear you though.
Yeah, great.
There you go.
Here.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So yeah, it was successful for what it was. And when I switched it over to the Quest, I had that place for 16 years. So, for those in the nightclub life, having a venue for 16 years, the capacity of it was 2,200 people doing that week after week for 16 years. Yeah. It was a success.
Because Prince sold Glam Slam Club to you, and then you renamed it Quest.
No. Actually, so I own the one. Prince never owned the one in Minneapolis. And this, again, speaks more to his generosity. He knew, and I knew, that more people were going to come to that club if it was a Prince club than it was a Gilbert Davison club.
Gotcha.
I knew on my side that he needed to expand his brand. Prince needed to be more than just a pop star. And so it would help him by showing that he has this business acumen and that he was, growing in his brand and what he was doing. So it worked for him also to have a club. With that said, and for those people out there that own a business, think about Prince owning a nightclub. Think about somebody of his stature actually owning one. It it from a practical side, it wouldn't make sense only because with the lawsuits and everything that would come flying through, suddenly he has this exposure. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to put him in that position. His business manager at the time was definitely not, and his lawyers were not going to put him in a position. And they made that clear to me. So we opened up the club I opened up the club in Minneapolis, and then we had a franchise in Yokohama, Japan, which a lot of people don't know about. Actually, I found a tape of that club the other day, and that club was beautiful. It was just as big as the one here in Minneapolis. It had a restaurant. It was retrofitted from what it was, but we had that one. And then Prince he did want to have his own clubs, and I was reluctant to do it. To be honest, I didn't want to do it because, again, how we're going to run this. I was already doing this one. I had Paisley, and I knew he wasn't going to go down
Yeah.
and run a club in Miami and run a club in Los Angeles. But I put those together. That's something that he wanted to do. And what I would do is I would have my general managers from here go to those other satellites. What I call them satellites, and then they would get those up and running and function. So all of it did kind of run out of the Minneapolis venues in one way, shape, or form. So we did that. So in the club in Miami, strange. It was funny when I signed off on the contract for that venue. The owner who we purchased the club from says, it's really weird you guys bought this venue. And I was like, well, why do you say that? And he goes, well, because this is where you had the end of the Purple Rain tour party. And I knew I had been in that space before, but I never made the connection to it.
Wow.
When he said it, it all came back to him. I'm like, oh my God, that it is the place. I remembered it was a movie theater and it had a balcony, and I thought it was one of the coolest places I'd ever been. Yeah. So, 8 years later, 6 years later, I ended up buying it. 8 years later. And then the one in Los Angeles was actually it's owned by a guy named Jim Kalash. This great guy. Hi, Jim, if you ever see this. He owned it, and it was Vertigo. It was a club called Vertigo, a very successful club. So we bought that club and changed it into Glam Slam Los Angeles. And that club was definitely had Prince's hand all over that venue. That one, I think, more so than the other ones, represented his vision and idea. It was definitely a departure from what I had developed in
LA
Minneapolis. The LA one. That was definitely a Prince club.
I kind of got that vibe because there's a bunch of clips from that Homer's Odyssey play or whatever that was, of all the naked women strapped to walls and stuff. And I'm thinking, this is got Prince written all over it.
That had Prince written all over it. It's funny. So the one in Minneapolis, I brought him down one time. So I want you to see the venue. And it's funny because I think he thought I was getting ready to open it. And they were still doing construction. The bars weren't done. I just kind of wanted him to see, how it was coming along. And so we walk in through all this debris and whatnot. And he looks at me and he says, what did you bring me down here for? I said, well, I wanted to see what it looked like. He says, I don't care what it looks like. I don't want to see it till it's done. And I'm like, okay. So, and then, when we opened it, I didn't want the bathtub. I didn't want the motorcycle, because I knew the club had to stand on its own 2 feet. Mm-hmm. I didn't want him to have to show up every weekend to, perform a concert in order to make the club work. It had to be its own thing. And it was. So, I think when people came in, and even when he came in, it's like there's no Prince pictures. There was nothing there. But I did, it was a little bit vanity or whatnot. So I had these reliefs made that were on the pillars in that club of his face and my face, and the person that helped me to open it were in there.
Really?
And
Did
yeah,
anybody,
Huh,
was
okay.
that kind of done in, very slyly on the,
yeah. If you didn't, it was kind of like a Disney thing. I'm a huge Disney fan. So it was kind of like, let's just put a little, Easter egg in the venue. So
Easter
when you
eggs.
walked in, that was the one, the prince's face was in that club.
very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was just in the LA one. This was in
No, this was the Minneapolis one, and
oh, the Minneapolis.
it was only in the Minneapolis one. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if any of you guys have been into the Glam Slam in Minneapolis, but if you didn't notice that, you missed it.
You
Yes,
missed it.
definitely
You missed it.
you missed it. Um, yeah, because I guess I guess the perfect closing point to this is kind of, what ended up happening with your relationship with Prince. I know that you stepped away in 95. You had mentioned I think your recollection was 94. Um, but you had mentioned that Maite was kind of part of that decision, but I was there anything else that kind of came into play as far as your decision to kind of walk away? I mean, was your
Well,
relationship
yeah,
in a good spot?
I would say that, like I said, as far as the relationship, um, it definitely had changed, particularly in that last year. Because there was just more no's. He was unhappy with the record deal.
Yeah,
And I really wouldn't say he was unhappy with the record deal. He was unhappy with the business model of record companies.
yeah,
And now I had become a part of that.
Hmm.
yeah,
And it was because I'm explaining to him, no, this is why this has to work this way. And it's like, well, he just didn't want it to work that way. Um, I didn't want to be, I couldn't say yes if I didn't mean it.
right,
So when the whole
Right.
slave issue and whatnot came up, I didn't agree with it at all. I was very much against it. I knew what he was trying to convey, but um, in some ways I found it offensive. You know, it's like Prince, slaves didn't get paid. They suffered, and that's not really where you're at. I understand your frustration, but that's just not what this is. Being happy, but I just didn't feel comfortable with that message being out there. Um, and as he wanted to go in different directions, they weren't the directions I wanted to go, and I didn't want to be complicit. I didn't want to, say, well, he made me do it. I didn't want to be that guy that said he made me do it and then come in with the bill.
Mm,
right.
I couldn't do it. I had a
okay.
responsibility to the staff. We had a wonderful staff at Paisley. There was a lot of sacrifice for everyone that worked in that environment. And I also felt he needed to understand that, again, Paisley was its own entity, and he had a responsibility to that.
Yeah. Well, that's what he
So,
wanted it anyways,
well,
because
Right.
yeah, but you created it. Like I said, if you create that business, you have to be there. And he was
right.
there, and I was fine with taking the responsibility of running it, but you couldn't just do whatever you wanted to do out of it. You couldn't abuse it.
Yeah.
You
Right.
couldn't shut down studios because you just don't want anyone in the studios when you need a business. It's part of the business model. You can't shut down the sound stage, because you just don't want anyone else to use the sound stage. You can't not go on tour when touring was part of the business model that we needed to run. You just, these are things that we had put in place, a pretty good foundation for him to continue to build what he wanted to build. That $100 million deal was worth more than 100 million. I know there's people out there, oh, it never really was. No, it was. And
Mm,
he had the support of Warner's. Warner's was trying to give him those things that he needed. Part of that deal was $30 million of funding for Paisley Park Records. And it was going to allow him to, yeah. So that 30 million was going to allow us to actually hire a staff of record people that were totally somewhat independent of Paisley, but they were still answering to me and to Paisley. They were part of the Paisley group, but they were going to work hand in hand with Warner's to produce artists. We signed George Clinton. We had Mavis Staples, T.C. Ellis, Tevin Campbell. All that was through that deal, and it was being funded by Warner's through the record deal that we put together. But he wasn't happy with that, and it was kind of like I didn't want. I just if I cared for him in the way that I felt personally, then I wasn't going to become a yes man. And if there's
That's
one thing about my position with him, I never was that person. I wasn't going to become that person. And, it was just time. It was time for me to leave. He wasn't happy about the fact that I left, but we lived right down the road from each other. And it's like, if you ever need me, just call me. I'll be there.
right. And
When was
like you
the last?
said, you left him in good hands.
You're right.
I thought he was in good hands. I thought from a
Exactly.
personal standpoint, she was definitely something that was going to help him to become the
Right.
man he needed to be.
I think one
Well,
of the hardest things is for an artist to separate that creative side and the business side. And
Yes.
so when you're that person and you're going to have that battle. So it's an amazing thing to have had you for all that time to save him from himself is really the only way
Thank
we
you.
could put it. So
I
yeah,
appreciate that. And yeah, and there's a certain marriage that has to take place with creatives in
right,
business. One does not work without the other. It's a
exactly.
symbiotic relationship. There's got to be the balance in that to make it work, and that's when it works. Um, and in a lot of ways, on the business side, he just at the time he just didn't. He wasn't really attuned to that. That's what was in his way, and you know, so
Hmm.
when was the last? I only have two more questions, and then I want to talk about what you're doing now, so that people can know how they can help and contribute to your future. Now, when was the last time that you spoke with Prince, and what did you guys talk about?
so after I left, we had deep conversations about the fact that I was going to leave. I was trying to actually, when I had announced my resignation, I was going to leave at the end of the year. So I was trying to find my replacement. Um, I don't think any of that he was really comfortable with or reacted to very well. And then some of the things he started doing were actually against what I was trying to do for him. So I moved that date up and left earlier, and then left earlier than that early was going to be. And so, with that said, we never had, a blowout, drag out argument, fight. I never wanted to feel disrespected by him, and I would never disrespect him. It was Prince's show. And at the end of the day, he could do, whatever he wanted with it. I loved him, and by me leaving in the way that I did, I felt it was I wished him the best. Like, going forward, I felt he was going to be fine, and he would continue to do Prince. Um, he did call a few times after I left. I just wasn't in a headspace of wanting to take the call at the time, and so our last conversation was that summer that I left. At the same time, with my relationship with Sheila or anything like that. If there was a need or something like that, he could have easily reached out to her. But he went on and he continued to do what he did, and Super Bowl and releasing these records and whatnot. And you found that where he was a lot of times, it was the music. I mean, everything was kind of focused on what that next project was and what the music was. And if you didn't have a role in that, then what role did you have? And so I think with a lot of the relationships that Prince has or had, it wasn't about whether he liked a person or didn't like a person or had a fight with this person or some. It was just you didn't have a role to play in that next thing that he was doing, and that's where his focus was on. So we didn't have any crosswords upon me leaving. Um, I was a fan when I left. I was a fan when he passed away. I was terribly distraught, like we all were when he passed. Um, and I
Where were
wish things would have turned out different.
where were you when you heard?
I was in Los Angeles, and so I got the call from Sheila that he had passed, and well, actually, the call was somebody was found in Paisley. Immediately you hope that it wasn't him. Immediately you hope that it wasn't something that he was associated with if it wasn't him. And then she called and she said it was him. And so we offered to come um, to Paisley, which was accepted. And so her and I flew in from Los Angeles. And so I was there that evening. They had found him that morning, and I got there that evening, which was surreal. I mean, I hadn't stepped into the building since 94, 95. And now here I am, back there. And it
That's
was
got
it was it was difficult, but um, the tragedy happened in the way that it happened, and there wasn't the structure necessary to navigate what happened. And um, in some ways, I found myself back in that position of helping or being responsible for how this was going to be handled. And so I handled it, you know, for my friend as best as I could, or as the opportunity um, presented itself. And I did it for no more reason than uh, out of respect for what he deserved. And I felt at the end of the day, the world lit up purple.
It did.
Right.
I think
Absolutely.
there's not a person in here that doesn't miss him and his
And that was good.
contributions and everything. Yeah, he's All right. So last question.
But I think I can't hear you, Chris, if you're talking. Can you hear me?
I can hear
We
you.
can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
can't hear you.
Okay.
Um, I see your mouth moving, but
Yeah,
I can't.
okay.
I don't know what happened here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, let's see. Let me see if I
Hey, you're back.
There we
I'm
go.
back.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
Fantastic. So this is the last question, and then I'm going to talk about what you're doing right now. We're going to talk about the artist management and Sheila and love for one another. But one of the questions, the last question I had for you, is that a lot of people don't know this, but you also manage Taika,
Mhm.
or not manage Taika. You work with Taika, or you are in management capacity. I'm not sure. But
I call it business management. It's kind of what I do overall. It's just navigating through whatever.
and
economy
I
needs.
know that so there's been a lot of what I consider kind of unfair perception about her involvement with Prince's legacy. And I kind of felt like this was a perfect opportunity for you to kind of clear that up as far as Taika's involvement with Prince's legacy and what's all going on, because I know that just with everything that's was going on with Primary Wave and all the the rights and stuff being I'm just hoping that you can kind of give folks a little bit of clarity and just kind of
Sure. So, contrary to popular belief, Taika has not abandoned her responsibility for Prince's legacy. As we all know, things were not left in the ideal position to be managed. And I give her credit. She recognized that, and she knew that a structure needed to be put in place to make sure that his legacy is upheld and continued, to the best of her ability. And to the best that the situation lend itself to. So Taika is actually part of the Primary Wave team. She is the consultant. Her and Prince's nephew, her son, President, they are the representatives for Primary Wave for the Paisley Park estate. So, as things
I'm
are
excited about it.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear. Jeff Page and I have talked about this a lot, because I know a lot of negativity has been thrown towards Primary Wave, like, oh, now what's going to happen? And we have come to a consensus, and we kind of enlighten people a little bit. It's like, do you realize that by the nature of business, Primary Wave's primary objective is to obviously be able to make money, but they also want to be able to solidify Prince's legacy.
Yes,
so all those things that you guys want, all those unreleased albums, all those things that you guys have been screaming for, you're going to get it.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
If that part didn't happen, who knows what the distribution.
Well, I think people have to realize, in his passing, and like I said, the chaos and how everything was unsettled. But you look and you realize what are the assets that were actually left behind. These are very highly specialized assets. This
Yes.
isn't just a house or a car, or hey, he left some cash. He left music, and in order, particularly in current day environment and whatnot, what do
Or
you
Rolex
do?
watch.
Yeah, or a
Right.
Rolex watch. What do you do? What do you do with all these assets? And you need to have someone that has the acumen and intelligence and the structure in order to not just cultivate it, but to make sure that it is handled appropriately. And I found that Primary Wave was a prime candidate to do that. That is their interest, to uphold the legacy of Prince. And working with Taika, they needed to make sure, and they wanted to make sure that she stayed involved and whatnot. So that's part of it. Taika hasn't gone anywhere. And furthermore, she is directly involved with the Love for One Another charity that Prince and Maite started back in 1998. That's been revived, and so Taika is a key member on the board on that. So she's helping to influence and pay attention to the philanthropic efforts that Prince had put forward. So Taika's still Taika's still there.
And since we're talking about that,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about, you are the director of the Love for One Another charities right now. And for
Yes.
those interested, it is L4, the number 4, OA.org. So tell people a little bit about how they can contribute to the Love for One Another charity and exactly what that entails and what your mission statement and purpose is.
So we are Love for One Another charities, and so you can go to l4a.org and you'll find our information there in the board and whatnot. Like most people, I mean, with most things, COVID really threw us for a loop. During COVID, we ran some different programs. We had $100 a day giveaway and things like that, and trying to provide support to people in need. And that's our mission. Our mission is helping people up and helping people out. And we were having this conversation on what was Prince doing, because the his philanthropic efforts weren't normal. Some people would say he would just give the
Right.
money and here you go. I asked my taste, how did you guys, how did you start finding, who to give to? She said, he just go online and go, oh, let's help that person. And, off he goes. And he would do that. So again, putting more structure behind the charity. We're going to ramp everything back up at the beginning of 2023, with COVID being over, and doing more outreach, paying attention towards programs, music programs, dance program, arts programs, science, and all those things that he was participating in. So, you're going to be seeing a lot with Love for One Another come 2023.
Well, I'm obviously very, very excited about that. I think it's I'm glad that the philanthropic efforts that he's done are still moving forward. And I know outside of that, you're also doing management as well. You're still you're working with Sheila E. You're obviously working with your son Michael, doing kind of artist management and business management. Can you tell a little bit of people about the company that you're working with now? And
So it's my own company, Via Legacy, and Via actually stands for Vision into Action. I kind of came up with that. I thought it was catchy. I like Via.
yeah,
So basically, what I do, again, I like to build platforms for people to move towards their goals. So whether it's in music or not, Jeff Katz is also a client of mine. The photographer Jeff, everyone knows
yes,
Jeff.
Wow. Yeah.
Working with that and doing those kind of things. Some projects in film and television as well. So it's not just in music. I know that I've been very fortunate in my career, and now I'm in a place of kind of, I don't know, say picking and choosing what I do or what I don't do, but it's really about sharing my experience and knowledge with people, and helping them to reach their goals and things like that. So I have a lot of people to thank for what I've experienced, and obviously Prince is one of them. Sheila's another. I've been fortunate enough to gain experience and work with, two of the top talents of our generation, really, and so I'm excited. Michael definitely gives me an outlet to continue on this journey, and I'm excited for him, and I'm proud of him, and so yeah, so there's just a lot of different things that kind of come in my way, and it's like, yeah, if you do this and you do that, and you tweak this, there, that might work, So when you release your record, Jeff, when you do yours, just give me a call and let's figure out what we can do.
The first call we made.
Call will be made for sure.
But I can't, again, I can't tell you how much of an honor it was to have you on board, and also more than anything for being so accommodating, for being on so long.
No, thank you.
I don't know if I must have properly prepped you that you're going to be here for a minute. But thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming on, and such phenomenal stories. I mean, you unveiled stories and tidbits that I've never heard before.
No.
And I think I've probably read every Prince book out there, including my taste and Sheila's and everybody else. It's unbelievable. Gilbert, thank you. Oh, I did have one floating question, and it's going to bother me. Glam Slam.
Get it out. Yeah, get it out. Just go ahead, throw it out there.
Glam Slam. The name of the club, was the song done first, or what? Did he write the song to?
No,
No,
the name Glam Slam, the song, all that was him. To this day, I don't know what it meant. I don't. It was funny. So we were on tour, and he came in the room, and like I said, it was kind of like, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine kind of thing. So I'm doing this club, and the club was under my company's name, which was Heaven and Earth.
Right.
And he walks into my room, and I think I'm sitting in there with some of the other guys, the security guys, and he says, "This Heaven and Earth thing, we're not naming the club Heaven and Earth." And he's really upset. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "No, Heaven and Earth is the name of the company that the club is going to be under. The name is Glam Slam." And his face just drops, and he looks at me. Oh, and he walks back out the room. And I just thought, it was kind of funny. But no, Glam Slam, that name was his. I probably wouldn't have named it that, but if it helped him to get his point across, I was fine with it. It worked.
Well,
awesome.
But I did change it for a reason at the same time. It's like,
Yeah, I do like Quest. And just to be clear, we actually did have a club here in Atlanta, which you're probably familiar with, the Tabernacle, which actually had 3 levels: heaven, hell, and purgatory.
Oh, really?
There's no earth, but yeah.
That's right.
Heaven actually featured well-known acts. Some of the headlining acts would play up there. Hell was more for techno bands and harder edged bands, and purgatory was acoustic and things like that. It was this really, it was really strange. It was a phenomenal club. I saw some amazing concerts there, but Heaven and Earth wouldn't have been a bad name for a club, just so we're clear.
Okay, no, yeah. Somebody asked me, are you going to open up another club in Minneapolis? And I was like, I wouldn't open up a can of soda in downtown Minneapolis. That's not to say it's not a great place. It's not a great city, but you have to deal with, the city officials and whatnot. And, I'm definitely pro-business. It's a lot of work. It's kind of like, hey guys, come alongside the businesses here and make it work. But sometimes it seems like they do things to
as
difficult as possible.
I'd like to do, Chris, I think this would be the most awesome thing if Mr. Gilbert Davison, if you would be willing to do a bumper for us.
Oh, absolutely.
The radio show.
It's a fantastic idea.
Let's
do it. As you know, we have an ASCAP licensed radio station. And just say this is Gilbert Davison, and you're listening to Funkatopia Radio. You can add your little spin on it or whatever. But yeah, we'll use it for sure.
You're not asking me to dance. So are we ready?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This is Gilbert Davison, and you're listening to Funkatopia Radio.
Perfect. Thank you. You have Paige for remembering. because I'm so enamored with this man. I mean, I literally have spent like decades watching this man keep crawling across credits, and I'm like, one day I'm gonna meet this man. I'm so
Well,
excited.
I hope
If
that
only,
I hope
if
that
only.
that holds now that we've had this conversation and
Oh my
whatnot.
gosh,
So
it was
I appreciate it.
phenomenal. This has
Thank you.
been
This
an
is amazing.
unbelievable night, Gilbert.
No,
Thank you
I
so
appreciate it.
much. Obviously, we'll be in touch, and send our love to Sheila, send our love to Maite and Taika and all them. Absolutely, just send our love in like bucket loads.
Thank you guys.
Right.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Get some rest. All right, everyone. What?
Wow. Wow. I mean, what can you say? That was amazing. That was exciting. And just like everybody was saying all through the chats, the stories, the experience that he's had, the first hand everything is, I mean, wow. Wow.
And I was saying this before. I was saying this before when we were. Yeah, I can't believe it's been almost 3 hours, 2.5 hours, basically. I mean, because we went over a little bit talking about honoring the passing of our friend Wally Safford.
Right.
But it was essentially a 2.5 hour roller coaster of Prince stories and items that I have never ever heard.
They airbrushed.
Prince was not naked on Love Sexy. You heard that. He was wearing shorts, and they airbrushed him nude.
I cannot believe it. that was just, that blew me away. That's great. That's
Okay.
wow. And everyone, the chats, excellent questions, great stuff. I mean, we couldn't get to all the questions, of course, but we wanted him to tell as many stories as he was willing to give us. But your participation was awesome too. It was great.
If you asked a question, and it wasn't, and we didn't put it out here live, it was either because we were planning on asking it, or we had already asked it, or the question itself was a little bit too broad.
Right.
Like I wanted to make sure that I got in like the big questions that I had. There was a bunch of questions that we passed over. There was at least a dozen questions. At least a dozen questions that there was 20 pages of questions that I had for him. Yeah, Audrey's like, now you have to redo the Love Sexy album.
I know. That's right.
Well,
here we go.
And I was talking to Dwayne Tudall. Was it yesterday? Yeah, I was talking to him yesterday. And I said, I know you got the book coming out with the Black Album, Love Sexy. I said, I'm going to get you some pieces. I am going to get you some pieces that you're going to be able to use in this book. And he was like,
there's gold. There's so much gold.
Oh my God. Did we ever?
So much gold.
Yeah. And you're welcome, Cassandra. Cassandra says, thank you for getting this man on your show. Just a great, and it was, that was what was the other crazy part of it. Was in the process of me trying to do my preliminary research for this interview, I went online, and
just nothing.
You guys can look for yourself. Go to Google and search for Gilbert Davison interview. Our announcement for the interview is number one.
Number one is the biggest thing out there.
He does not do interviews.
Right.
The largest interview that he did was at the Celebration in 2018, where him and Sheila E. came out, which I was at, which is great. It was a great show. And they just kind of chatted, and it was 30 minutes at best. And most of it was Sheila, because he was interviewing Sheila, and then Sheila we threw like a couple questions at him. And that was it. And then there was another interview that he had done with a podcast of a friend of his called Combat Radio. And that interview was gone, except for a snippet of the interview that was like 3 minutes long. And the first minute and a half was a theme from Purple Rain. And the last minute was his Combat Radio I guess logo, kind of like the video we do at the beginning of our show. So it was like nothing. And
Right.
then it was Gilbert talking in the middle, but for like not even 30 seconds total. So there was no way, there was no research for me to do. I was like, I want to listen to the interviews. I want to make sure I don't ask the same questions. I don't want to be redundant. Turns out, the man doesn't do interviews.
Yeah. So there it is.
Turns
This
out
was
the man does not do interviews, but you saw him here, right here on Funkatopia Live.
Yep.
As you can see, I left a scroller down the bottom, because I think it's very, very important because of the fact that he's still doing all that work with the Love for One Another charities. If you are a fan of Sheila, if you are a fan of Gilbert Davison, if you are a fan of Taika, if you are a fan of Maite, if you love those people, you will go to L4OA.org. That's L, the number 4, OA.org today, and you'll make sure that you figure out some way that you can get involved or contribute to that charity because they are still doing phenomenal work. It's just, you got to see all the stuff that they're doing. It's insane. So please make sure that you go there and contribute and you figure out ways that you might even be able to participate and help. One of the things, Jeff Page, that I mentioned to you before off air, before we went on live today, I want to do a drive for them. I want to do some type of pledge drive for Love for One Another charities. Put together another prize package and have a huge drawing raffle for some really awesome prizes, and just really do a big drive for them. I think the last time we did that, I did that for Bootsy Collins, because Bootsy reached out to me and he said, "I've got this thing, let's do it," and we killed it. We had an amazing raffle, and it was a lot of prizes. And James says, "I refuse to believe the Love Sexy album cover story." I don't blame you, but it's way more plausible.
Yeah.
Than him actually sitting there naked. Because my thought every time I see that album cover, now I don't, but starting tonight and moving forward, I won't look at that album cover the same. But every time I looked at it in the past, I always thought to myself, and I'm gonna pull it back up here just so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Every time that I see this album cover, I think he was butt ass naked.
He was butt.
I didn't mean to curse. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to curse. I typically don't like to curse. But he was butt ass naked on this album cover, and somebody was sitting there with the camera. And I know every woman that looks on this album cover goes, there was some lucky person that was out.
Some lucky person.
Some lucky photographer somewhere.
I wish I was a photographer. I'm going to go into that industry now.
He probably launched the careers of a bunch of photographers. Who wanted to be photographers. Oh, I'm gonna. Okay, so
but this story launches the career of Photoshop experts now.
Oh my gosh. So that's amazing. There was so many holy crap moments tonight. Unbelievable. So many just jaw-dropping stories.
Yep. Those of you who came in late and missed it,
don't worry.
Go back and you can catch it on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe and all that. And then we've got, of course, Facebook. We'll have it back out there, and become a Patreon, and all those things that we need to happen, and be a part of the family. And now you'll catch up.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. Make sure that you follow us and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube as well. YouTube is really important. Yes, Arlene, thank you for reminding me of that little tidbit too, that Prince actually had a normal job.
I know.
He actually had a normal job before he was a musician. You would think, since he started so early at 16 or 15 or whatever, that he was only a musician all his life. He never had a normal job. It turns out it was not true. He actually was a golf caddy.
Yeah. Now there was no say on how long.
No, there was no say in how long, but that's crazy. It's just many stories. I'm sure there will be a part 2, because from what I could gather, Gilbert had a phenomenal time. He had a good time. I can normally sense somebody's vibe when they're over it. They're just like, yeah, let's just be done.
Yeah. Can we wrap this up?
Yeah, can we wrap this up? Look, I
I got
got
a baseball game to watch.
I got a can of chili that's calling my name, so I'm gonna call it.
I
Yeah,
got a sports team I gotta watch. I'm just
yeah, exactly. So, my butt's itchy. I'm out of here. Anyways, that is
dig.
yes. So you guys will also know that once we stop, this is going to be still sitting on Facebook and still sitting on YouTube in its unedited form. But tomorrow, you guys will be able to listen, not watch. You'll be able to listen to this broadcast on all of your favorite channels. So you can listen to it on iHeartRadio.
Mhm.
Yes, I said iHeartRadio. You can listen to the replay on iHeartRadio. You can listen to the replay on Odyssey, AUDACY. You can listen to it on Spotify. Yes, we're on Spotify. We're on Odyssey. We're on on Apple Podcast. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcast. The replay will be up. I will make sure that I take care of this tonight and get it downloaded and uploaded in probably an unedited format, because there's not much that needed to be edited out. Nothing really. It was a pretty smooth night.
It was pretty smooth.
Considering
we went right in from the pre-show. There was no pot. Let's go.
And of course, before we go, want to send again condolences to the Detroit family for Wally Safford and all his contributions. It was really a blessing to have Gilbert here, being that he spent so much time with Wally and was able to kind of contribute stories and condolences and whatnot. Audrey mentioned to me today that they are going to be doing a celebration of life event somewhere in the Detroit area on the 24th of this month. I don't believe that I'm going to be able to make it, but if you're in the Detroit area or have the capacity or ability to be able to get on a plane and go to the Detroit area, I will make sure that I post that information about its whereabouts and whatnot as soon as I get it, so that you guys can make your plans. But the 24th of this month, at September 24th, which is a Saturday, there is going to be a celebration of life to celebrate Wally. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of folks there. But definitely, it was an honor to have crossed paths and hung out with this man on so many occasions, and to spend hours no joke, hours talking on you thought that this tonight was long.
Yeah.
I can recall nights when Wally Safford and I sat on the phone till 2:00 in the morning, just talking about whatever.
Right.
I mean,
This is
what type of spices he puts on his chicken and stuff. I mean, it was just like everything and nothing. I've sat and enjoyed the company of this man, because he could talk about dirt and make it so friggin' entertaining that you just sit there and he was just like Gilbert said, he's a storyteller. He was such a wonderful person, such an honest man with high integrity, and I'm going to miss him dearly. And but I also know that he was a lot closer to a lot of people. So my serious condolences to those people like Jerome Benton and Rodney Fitzgerald and Audrey Johnson, and just people that he was actively a part of their lives way more regularly than he was in mine. Matter of fact, we just had him on the show. We just had Wally on the show not even a month ago. It was actually it was a month ago. I want to say July 28th, I think. I want to say that's the date. July 28th was the last show. We did a Purple Rain premiere show. Was it that one? Yeah, he was on the show like a little over a month ago. He was on the show. Right. And I did not, for some reason, his phone number changed, and I didn't have his new phone number. And Rodney called me and said, "Hey, I got Wally on the line." He said, what number are you calling? And I gave him the number. And he was like, oh man, I don't use that phone anymore. Like, okay, all right, superstar. So, and I got his new phone number, and we luckily arranged to have him come on that show. And I'm so glad that we did. But definitely check out the post that I did on Facebook for Wally, because not only did I link to that last time that he was on the show, but there is another link when it was him and Damon Dixon on the show. I want to say this was about 3 years ago, and Damon Dixon and him hadn't talked to each other in many, many, many years. So it literally is Damon Dixon and Wally Safford just cutting up and telling stories for what seems like the better part of 2 hours, and with me not saying a word, just sitting back and just
the beauty of a good reunion.
So Stephanie just indicated that it will be live streamed that day. Also, his daughter put out a statement, so we will make sure that we put out that live stream information, so that I might be able to figure out a way to be able to pull that live stream broadcast and push it out to our Facebook page and our YouTube page on the day that it happens, so that so it's not just live streaming there, but it's also live streaming on all of our channels as well, so that you guys can all participate in it. So you won't look too hard. So so rest in peace, Wally. Thank you for everything. And
thank you to Gilbert, man.
Yes. Thank you to Gilbert Davison. What a night. Oh my God, what a night. So anyways, support Funkatopia. You can support us on Venmo at Funkatopia, via the Cash App at $ Funkatopia. And you can also become a member at patreon.com/Funkatopia. That's patreon.com/Funkatopia. That's FUNKATOPIA. You can support us in a variety of ways, but Patreon is definitely the preferred way that you can support us, because we send out all kinds of cool gifts and files and weird stuffs, just stuffs. So it's not a one-sided relationship there for sure. So, man, so much fun. Matter of fact, I'm going to make sure that the video is readily available for all of our Patreon supporters for download if you'd like. So
awesomeness.
Make sure that we're there.
Thank you guys for all being here and hanging out all the way to the end. It's awesome.
Yes. And apologies to the Funked Up app folks, where I started like 5 minutes late. I was like, oh crap, we're not
yeah.
I forgot to push it out to the Funked Up app, so my apologies, but I will make sure that gets rectified, and you guys will be able to listen once again in a variety of places. So
we'll take care of you guys.
Yeah. So Funked Up folks, I'm letting you go and turning the music back on for you. So thank you guys for tuning in on the Funked Up app, and we'll talk to you guys later. As for all you other fine folks, thank you once again for watching. This video will be available on Facebook and YouTube, our YouTube channels. Make sure you subscribe and like and follow and all the stuff that you guys do with your little clickety clacks.
Clickety clacks.
And you can tell them that's what old guys say.
Yeah, clickety clacks.
Oh, you clickety clacks. Shout out to Mrs. Wellington's Warehouse, which is a auction house that actually has they do Prince merchandise, official Prince merchandise from merchandise that was readily available before. This is actually an Emancipation hat that I actually got the gold embroidered logo. It says MPG Records on the back. It's very, very awesome. Nice. So shout out to Mrs. Wellington's Warehouse. I got a lot of cool stuff. Oh, you want to see something really cool I got from there? You got to see this. You got to see this before we go. You got to see this, and I'm gonna make myself big so you can see this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, pills for that.
It's the Times Pandemonium CD, but they released it. Oh. They released it to some folks, and it's got the CD inside and the book and everything, but it's an actual clock. It's an actual clock that you can set on your desk. Now, I'm not kidding you. This was one of those things that was on the auction at Mrs. Wellington's Warehouse.
Cannot believe it.
And I won this. And so if you guys want some really, really cool Prince gear, I would join. Called Mrs. Wellington's Warehouse, MRS period, Wellington's Warehouse. And you have to ask to join, and then you'll be admitted in. But yeah, they got some really, really cool stuff. I think that MPG Music Club shirt that I was wearing a few weeks ago was from there. This time clock is from there. And this Emancipation hat, there's a few things laying around here that I was able to score. And obviously
awesome.
The bad thing is that when more people join, then the bids start getting out of hand.
Higher. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
But
just
that's all right. It is what it is.
but it's okay. I want all of you guys to yes, it's on Facebook. Just so we're clear. It's on Facebook. Yes, there are other competing auction channels out there, and the ones that are out there, there's nothing necessarily wrong with them. They've been around for a very, very long time, but pricing and stuff just gets crazy. It just gets ridiculous. It's just so this is like a more down to earth, offering. So I'm not going to name any names. I don't think you like anyways.
Nope, we won't. We won't say
it's
anything
okay.
about
I'll
that.
leave put you back in the mix. You're just kind of talking and making noise.
What?
What were you doing when I was large?
I wasn't doing anything.
For all you audio folks are like, what does that mean? What
Let me
were
put
you
my pants
doing
back
when I
on.
was
Hold
large? Yes, Vicky, that is on Facebook. This is Wellington's Warehouse. All right, guys. Good night. We'll see you. Not surprisingly, nothing locked in. We got a few things that are working out. We are still trying to make sure that we're trying to lock down a lot of different interviews
Some
and stuff.
things.
So we've got some things that are working, and
in the pipeline.
yeah. The problem is that some people aren't available on Tuesday nights, so we kind of offered to pre-record, but we know that you guys like the live experience, so we try to kind of keep it in there. So anyways, we will let you know what's happening next Tuesday. And if nothing's happening Tuesday, we'll do something special to accommodate for it, like we did last week, where we played a bunch of live concerts for 3 days to say, sorry, here's 3 days of live concerts on the Funked Up app. So we'll probably do something similar. And of course, if you don't know what the Funked Up app is, look for it. Funked Up, FUNKEDUP, Funked Up, one word. Just look for it on in the store, your Android store, your Apple store, wherever, and download it and listen. Is that what Jeff was doing? Jeff was doing the bird. Yeah, that's what that had to be what happened. All I know is that I was full screen to show off that time clock. And then when I came back, he had his hands up in the air and his shirt was off, and he was.
Good thing you can't see my pants.
He was
Yeah,
airbrushed.
that's it. Photoshop airbrushed.
He was airbrushed naked. All right. Good night, everyone. I hope you guys
Good
had
night,
a
everybody.
fantastic time. We will make. We'll be back. See you guys. Good night. Have a fantastic. And as always, Funkatopia Live is not in any way affiliated with Prince Rogers Nelson, the estate, or anything ordained by Prince yet. Good night, everyone. Hope you had a fantastic night. Make sure you tell your friends about this broadcast. It was a monster. Good night.